Amen. I'm pleased to announce that Congresswoman will lie in state in the City Hall Rotunda Monday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's been done once before from Dr. Michael DeBakey. Reflecting on the best way to honor and recognize her public service, I thought that certainly everyone would join me in saying Congresswoman Jackson should lie in state. The plans would be, with Council's cooperation and approval, would meet in the Legacy Room at 8:30 Monday. We'll have opportunity to visit and go as a group to greet the family on the steps of City Hall sharply at 9 o'clock. There'll be a short service, and then we can go to the Rotunda and pay our respects. The family was very appreciative. I think it's certainly appropriate that she come back to City Hall where she served over 30 years ago. I could go and spend a lot of time giving you all the background of the Congresswoman and I working together over 30 years. She ran for judge twice, 86, 88, out of my Senate office. Someone from Independent Heights said, "You've got to meet this dynamic young lady." So we did. We gave her a private phone in a little private location. Private meaning it wasn't in my Senate office, but adjoining. She didn't make the judicial races. Then Kathy Whitmire put her on municipal courts, and she got elected to council. So for over 30 years, she and I served the same communities. Same banquets, same school events, same churches. We were actually colleagues and supported one another. She endorsed me, I endorsed her, and then I can't tell you how many hours I've spent in my life waiting for her to get through speaking. But it was a long time. And then Mayor Turner was our state representative. So we would go in the order of importance, and it would be due to our office that we held. The Congresswoman would go first, then I'd go as the senator, and then Sylvester Turner would go as the state rep. So, you know, she would go on and on because of her passion and love of her constituents. And people would ask me, when is she going to be through? And I said, well, that's Sheila being Sheila. And that was in a very favorable statement of she's going to quit when she gets through because she has something to do. So I just was looking for the appropriate way to honor her. I think we can all discuss going forward. I think the one idea I have is the multi-service center in Acres Home, where she spent days and years meeting with her constituents, could be named in her honor. But today, I'm excited about the opportunity to honor her in the city Rotunda, and I know you join me. Monday will be a challenging day for me. I've got to leave that service and get to Fort Bend to pay our respects to our civilian HPD employee, Russell Richardson, who will be laid to rest in Sugar Land on Monday at 11. Then I've got to leave that service and get to Austin for a Senate hearing on holding CenterPoint accountable. I'll probably arrive in Austin around 2. They're going to allow me to speak when I arrive, so I'll do my best to represent your views that CenterPoint must be held accountable, must do better, get their outage detection system up, and get ready for the next storm. I look forward to my colleagues in the Senate who have a lot of experience on holding people accountable. The PUC will be there, so that'll be a busy day. We're still in a recovery mode from Beryl. I was in Northeast Houston Saturday. You cannot believe, and I know you've seen it in your communities, but Northeast was particularly hit hard by the destruction brought about by tall pine trees. 75-foot pine trees, 75 years old, just completely through. I know the Bennetts who got coverage, and everyone was there to assist. Then I was taken by community leaders north of Beltway 8, which was not even in the city of Houston, but people were still desperate for assistance, so we went there. I've had solid waste go back to the community because we were successful in getting the trees off some of the houses out to the front yard for pickup. So we have a lot left to do, but as I said last week, I want to get the director of the emergency center here to talk about our preparation, where we are today, and more importantly, where we're going forward. I would suggest that we get the CenterPoint executives over here in a committee hearing of the Economic Committee. Ma'am?
And resiliency.
And maybe the Resiliency Committee to meet together. I think hopefully the Economic Committee will attract everyone, but I'll leave it to the judgment of those chairs. But that would be a great opportunity for us to at least get information from CenterPoint and hold them accountable as we go forward. With that said, I would ask Director Munoz to come forward. He's the Acting Director of Public Safety and Homeland Security. I would also, before he starts, encourage all the members to visit the Emergency Center. In fact, I understand they're going to do a review there for the next 3 weeks. If you haven't been there to see the city employees that work around the clock in the dispatch center, and equally important, how prepared they are around the clock. They don't wait for a storm. Under derecho, it was sudden and intense, and they were prepared. So every storm is unique, has different requirements, but I don't think there's a better person in the United States to handle these crises than the Tom Munoz that's before us today. Tom, I'll yield to you. Would you start by giving us an introduction of your background and how you gained the experience that you have today?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mayor. So background, I know about resiliency. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley in government housing, so I've learned the hard way what it means not to have electricity, and not by choice sometimes. Because, yeah, we couldn't, I know the importance of ice, and I think that's why God put me where I am today. I did graduate from University of Houston with a bachelor's degree. I then got 2 master's degrees in emergency management and homeland security, and working on a third in crisis communication out of the love I have for what I do. My career-wise, Houston Fire Department, proud member, rose up to the ranks of Assistant Chief of Homeland Security. While doing my work with the Houston Fire Department, captain of the hazmat team, which is a proud accomplishment for myself, being it's a specialized team. With that, also, as my position as an assistant chief, I was able to get grants. I understand the importance of the vulnerable community. I was able to get the largest grant in the country for smoke alarms for the deaf. 24 years, sir, with the fire. 24.
Yeah.
24 years from there, retired. But during that process, I was also selected and elected as the chairman of the Human Relations Committee for the International Association of Fire Chiefs. And so I learned a lot from the fire department on crisis in the city and what it means, the great men and women that we have working for the fire department. The Coast Guard experience, I went in as a petty officer. I then was selected for officer candidate school, and I did 25 years with them, 21, excuse me, and I was able to go ahead and retire as a commander with the U.S. Coast Guard. During that process, I was activated to some major storms. My last deployment was Puerto Rico, where I was the emergency preparedness liaison officer, as well as overseeing St. Croix and south part of Puerto Rico. So a lot of that, and in between that, I was also appointed, and I'm currently appointed to the FEMA National Advisory Council, which is an appointment by the FEMA administrator and blessed by the White House. So that's big kudos to what the city has provided. And my education also included Naval Postgraduate School Executive Leadership Program, as well as Executive Leadership completion of Notre Dame for the executive program as well, and the National Intelligence University in Washington. So that sums it up.
Let me cut to the chase. What's the key to preparation?
The key to preparation, Mayor, is experiencing it and having the experience that I've done, not only through the Houston Fire Department, where you see the impact of what goes on within the city, but also at the national level of seeing how the logistics work, seeing the importance that we talked about communication all the time. So those are the things that I've gathered throughout my years, and I even consider my childhood years as part of the preparation to know what people are experiencing and why that compassion comes in. So that all those combined with fire, Coast Guard, life experiences has really gotten me to this position and what we have to do to move forward. So. Yes, sir. Now I'm going to hit some highlights on the actual timeline. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we started noticing the tropical storm formed in June 28th. Then, of course, it intensified July 2nd. We had our first TDM call with weather calls, citywide decision makers on the call on July 2nd as well. July 3rd, we started having our tactical discussions with OEM, HFD, HPD, Public Works, Solid Waste. The same day, July 3rd, we started having tactical hurricane preparation discussions with U.S. Coast Guard and their air operations discussions as well. At the same time, we were still working July 4th Freedom Fest. We were monitoring the COPA that same day, and then on top of that, we closed that down and went into the natural disaster preparedness that we were doing. We started monitoring the storm, obviously, throughout the whole process. July 5th, through the coordination calls, HFD, HPD, Special Operations with Water Side Divisions have already started presetting their equipment, coordinating their rosters, making sure that their men and women were ready to respond should it shift. July 5th, we also started sending out emails to council and staffers about the track of the storm. We started doing our first media request on July 5th as well. July 6th, National Weather Service briefings that we had with OEM staff. Assignments were given. OEM assignments were then pre-designated and ready to respond. Then on July 7th, even though we were still getting information it was going to be heading more towards, it was coming towards the east, we started getting ready for that. We activated. We made the decision to activate on July 7th, and I mean fully activation. It's important to know that prior to that, we still had the virtual activations, having the meetings, the Teams calls, the monitoring. We're having up to 3 a day. The HEC was activated, which what that means, not only from the OEM side, but 911 call takers were bought in to be able to absorb the following morning should it shift. So we already had them in place prior to the storm. Also on July 7th, we were already in discussions with the NGOs, with the Red Cross, we were Salvation Army, all the VOADs, all those agencies that help in the event we should have gotten a disaster comes a swing towards us. Once on landfall, we were already there, ready to respond. That same day, because of the pre-planning, Finance was able to give the internal order, which is very important in our business because that Finance internal order allows us to start capturing all the public assistance information that's needed for those numbers that the state and FEMA require dollar amounts, which that sets a trigger for the categories that are about to take place. July 9th, TDM was already setting up what we call their resource staging area, NRG. That's through the requests, through everything that's taken place. And then at the same token, this storm was definitely wide impact. What we look at is the vulnerable populations, our infrastructure. We had 29 hospitals in the region that went into internal disaster. What that means is either they had light issues, electricity issues, communication issues. And what that does is obviously backlog the patients. So we requested a medical shelter that came in on July 9th. They started setting up. And that was an intake to set up 250 medical beds for patients at the NRG. And that was a very robust response from them. Part of that process was also getting those teams that we had already been talking about prior to landfall. We started meeting with our catastrophic medical operations center individuals that were able to start tracking those hospitals. And I'm proud to say that they are now out in our EOC. Prior to that, they were in another county. They decided to come over with us. So now we have them so we could be able to tell what hospital counts we have, what type of damages, and we're able to get that information for the infrastructure. As far as TDM setting up, I did mention we had 250 beds set up. Once the storm happened, because of the pre-staging on the first night, it's important to know that because of that, HFD was able to respond in the middle of the storm to 3,003 calls, which included 82 high water rescues. That's in conjunction with HPD, who was able to do 56 high water rescues. But at the same token, because of the pre-posture that had been taken, HFD was able to respond to 747 live wire calls. And our 911 call takers, the normal call volume is 10,000 per day. In 2 days, our 911 emergency call takers took 48,500 calls. And that is because of the pre-positioning that had already taken place in anticipation of what could occur. Obviously, we could not have seen that 2.1, almost 2.3 million people were without electricity, which changed the infrastructure, but our pre-staging, our pre-planning throughout the year allowed us to react that way. Then, of course, now moving forward, July 16th, we started the recovery process, which we're coordinating with now. And I will tell you that because of the capturing, the planning we've done before, we were able, the numbers, the dollar amounts are very important to set up. As I mentioned before, the state has a threshold of $53 million to start getting that federal aid. The county has $21 million. Us alone have done $125 million of damage that we captured, and that includes a preparedness. It's category A's or debris, and then category B, which is the bulk of the, part of the preparedness is the first responders, everything that's done to prepare for that. So that is the highlight of the actual timeline, sir. And I'll move on to what the numbers are now, if that's all right, or if any questions. So as I mentioned, 29 hospitals, 19 City of Houston proper, 2.2 without electricity, and we were having to start the logistics. We created a OEM MC at HoustonTex.org, and that was our mass care, because so much was coming in that we were having to capture that. We had all hands on deck, obviously, that we're getting that information. At the same time as we were having to deal with this storm, we had our heat activation. And we understand that the heat compounded with no electricity was a huge concern for us. So we were able in the beginning, just to give you an idea, the multi-service centers we had already pre-designated, only 2 had no electricity. Had electricity, excuse me. So that was like we had to go to plan B. So obviously with our NGOs and our private industries and the YMCA and so forth, we were able to get that. So we identified 61 sites within the first week. We had 64,000 people register for cooling centers. But that success was also because of the support that we have from ARA, and Director Paez and her staff, Billy Rudolph. We were able to offer the Z-trips through that process. And Metro was obviously helping, but again, the pre-damage assessments have to be cleared, roads have to be cleared. We talked about live wires, how do we get to point A to point B? So that was helpful for us. Z-trips, 448 people took advantage of that opportunity, which is great for us. And Centerpoint, 311, since we had already set up, sir, council members, already had their staff, and they took an additional 3,000 calls for people just wanting information on the status of Centerpoint, what was happening. So that was something they experienced. The other thing that they also took the calls on were one of the big things that we always focus on from the compassionate side of the house is the vulnerable populations and how do they get that help. They were able to do 10 transportation calls for medically fragile people that couldn't just get in a normal vehicle. Ice and water distribution. We talked a lot about that, and I'll hit some highlights. We had 5 strategically placed points of distribution. What we look at is, let's look at those, but we have to look at the access, right? We offered Z-trips, how do we get that? We did the flyers, we did that. And the reason for that, sir, is that ice was a commodity that everybody was looking at. Looking at Tatum, they had their issues as well as getting it. We were having to get ice from Kentucky with that. And someone said, as we were talking and late in the evening, we were looking at the fact that, it's important to know that the state that day got hit, 121 counties were impacted. And FEMA has 13 current disasters that they're working with, right? So everybody was after the hot commodity, which was, no pun intended, was ice. So we were normally we would get it from internal, but then they were going to Alabama. And then we decided to make the decision, and thank you for your support, council members and mayor, to, instead of waiting, because we were in the waiting line, and Councilman Peck, she experienced us getting told, it's en route. We'd call her, hey, it's en route, and I would get those frustrations. And I got to say that, Mayor, the compassion that Councilmember Peck and everyone here in the council members show is so important, because I could tell that frustration, but more importantly, at some point I even hung up and I told the staff, we got to make it happen. And I called that vendor and said, what just happened? And I swear, I think she had tears in her eyes because people are waiting. So that's when we talked to the staff. We thank you for allowing us to purchase 5 trailers of ice.
What's it cost?
Approximately $200,000, sir, for 5 trailers.
18-wheelers, $30,000.
And
why don't you pre-position that ice before the storm?
So, sir, that's a good question. We could pre-position that, right? The question is, we have to know it's not a good idea to put them in the impact zone. And what do I mean by impact zone? So a trailer with 40,000 pounds, according to the transportation department, can be tipped over with 45 to 55 mile an hour winds. And not to mention that where you position it, how do we know that area is not going to be impacted? How do we know that debris or trees aren't going to fall in that trailer? Who's going to man those trailers? Security issues. So that's a perfect scenario. But the end result, we look at the 11 districts, that's our goal to do that. And the thing is, do we pre-position and then have that storm? Because if you recall, we were just looking at the perimeters of those wind conditions between 39 and 65. However, in some areas, we were hit with 75 to 90, 98 mile an hour winds. So that investment that we would have made, if we do all sites, doing the math and what the numbers are, is approximately $1.2 million a day. And to have those pre-positioned, how do we do that? And how do we not guarantee or give you the guarantee nothing's going to happen? So those are the things the challenges that we face continuously in each storm. And through my experience and my professional experience, on the average 2 to 3 days to start getting those logistics right. And so those are the challenges that we face. Not to mention, as I had mentioned earlier, that some of those sites were without electricity. We didn't know if there was access to the roads and to the areas. So those are the things that the long-term goal, Mayor, is to have that, but we had to look at that. So we have to look at all those scenarios and worst-case scenarios and what's the return on the investment at that time. So that's the hard decisions that have to be made. But we did get the ice. And as a result of what we did and through all the coordinations, once the battle rhythm was established into day 4 and 5, not only through TDM, but through ourselves as far as logistics.
This may not even be for TDM. You want to say?
Yes, that's Texas Department of Emergency Management, which is a state emergency management
Which
agency.
we collaborate with and depend on.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, sir. You recall, NIM Kid was in our office within this third day, along with the Lieutenant Governor, Acting Governor, trying to see what the needs are and how do we get those numbers, right? So, but again, everybody was going after the same support, which is 121 counties throughout the area. 106,000 residents did get the ice. That's was through the C pods that we had, or pods as I call them. So we had that. We had our 5 pods, which were Acres Home, Northeast, Sunnyside, Denver Harbor, and Kingwood. But it's also important to know that our teams were assisting some of the, some council members would call, some of the churches, let's do that force multiplier to be able to get those logistics to them as well so they could distribute to the residents. Mass feeding, we coordinated that prior. And as of this today, 160,000 people have received meals for that. The Red Cross Salvation Army had 34 that we've already had talked about prior to the storm, feeding sites so people can go and get their foods. The Red Cross had 5 shelters that we coordinated with them. And as of yesterday, approximately 2,100 people, overnight people that they call overnights, were taking advantage of those shelters to help them during these time of crisis. I've talked about the vulnerable population. Thanks to the council members and what we identified at the Red Show approximately 7 weeks ago, the STEER program, which was a lot of you, thank you so much, were making calls, right? We got those lessons learned, okay, what could make it run smoother? As a result, we made approximately 3,000 calls to individuals like we did last time. And then, as per the process of the law, we performed 1,517 wellness checks, which means knocking on doors. And that was, again, through the collaborated efforts in the pre-planning with HFD inspectors, our CERT program, all those individuals that could either make calls or do those calls. HFD, PD was knocking at doors to verify that people were having the opportunity. However, we took the step, as from last lessons learned, on the individual assistant homes that we had to make sure we were, we've talked about it time again, and that's a very hot topic for us, for me. So because of the process, we received 64 independent homes, living facilities for seniors, notifying us, hey, this is what we're doing. We did wellness checks. We coordinated with the Red Cross, the Salvation Army for meals that they had to, just to make sure that they were being taken care of. SETRAC, which is a part of the Catastrophic Medical Operations Center, also reached out to 90. We looked at the list, and I'll tell you, the hard part was trying to identify, without the tracking, the outage tracker, it's very difficult to see where what we were getting just a number, 2.3 million, and you're like, okay, what do we do with that, right? Prior to it having crashed, we were able to look at the zip codes, and it would tell us, and through our GIS team, we were able to identify, okay, in this zip code, we have this nursing home. However, we still were looking at that, figuring those out, because we had already compiled, along with SETRAC, a list of all the nursing homes. So they made 97 calls to those nursing homes without electricity to ensure that everything was being taken care of and that those individuals had the assistance that they needed. And then out of that, so that was a total of 183 calls. That also included 22 individuals that needed medical assistance, which was oxygen, any type of issues, electric medical equipment that was needed. So we used all that data to make sure that we were doing that above and beyond the proactive approach. As I mentioned, inside our EOC, we had the medical incident support teams from SETRAC that were also doing those welfare checks. There were oxygen teams. People were calling saying, I'm about to go low on our oxygen, because of no electricity, that we're delivering those to them. We were monitoring those continuously. Moving on to the FEMA side, now we're still dealing with, and I wanted to say we're fully into the recovery phase, but just yesterday, and thank you, Council Member, we're working with Dustin in one of the facilities in your area that apparently had gotten some type of eviction or some notice to vacate the premises because of the building structure. We were able to send our teams out there, and thank you so much for that support of working with our teams to make sure that, one, do they have the resources needed? Do they qualify for some type of FEMA benefit, which oftentimes includes the temporary sheltering assistance that helps that? And then we help coordinate with the apartment complex on what's your plan to make sure that these individuals aren't left out in the cold or in the elements, I should say. So with that, due to the fact that we met those thresholds, we also met all of the 7 categories from FEMA, which is the debris removal, protective measures, road and bridges, water control facilities, buildings and equipment, utilities, and parks and recreation. So because of the pre-positioning, we had our finance teams ready to go to start capturing that, so that way we could submit for reimbursement, which we're currently doing now.
Tom, I don't want to cut you off because it's something we all need to hear. You've described the preparation and the real-time challenges. Save some of your time and take what you need to talk about what we need to do better and better preparation going forward from what we learned from this storm. And you can touch on generators. You know, I'm still disturbed that we had 10 fire stations without backup power that we actually had to shut down. What can we do to prepare going forward?
Yeah, moving forward is obviously generators are going to be the big one, right, for us that we have control over. The generators are obviously the lifeline. We're looking at the priorities. You know, the goal is obviously to have the multi-service centers where we could reach out to and have that hardened facility that we don't have to worry about if there is a storm, how can we actually utilize that facility center. And of course your fire stations and your police stations, those areas that without that, there was a lot of logistical moving with that. And so that was a huge concern for us as far as that. Moving forward too, sir, is getting at least some type of long-term goal, a warehouse that allows us to store either our own ice without having to wait to make our own ice. We've been throwing all these ideas to be self-resilient for at least the first 72 hours. I will tell you that there is an emergency management grant that we're going to put in for just that infrastructure. So we could be ready to go, and at least I know we have our resources without having to stand in line, as we've seen. And that's always the reality that I'd like to see within a 3 to 5 year goal of doing that. Been having some great discussions with CJ Messiah, Director Messiah, on what are the priorities. You know, what do we look at? And we're looking at, we want to meet with you as well, council members, to see are we missing something, because you are the force multiplier that we need, so we could all have ownership on that and we could start identifying. You know, talking to Councilman Peck, I see her district and it's like, okay, what are we? Let's think outside the box. And if there isn't that municipal center or any city property, how do we work with those partners to say, hey, you know, let's work together on how we could structure this. So that's the long-term plan for us. And some of the goals that we've met is communication, not only through yourselves that we're working on always improving, but through the community. You know, we send out the message to all the general consulates of the city, 98, to be our force multipliers, but it's still, that's always a concern for us, that are people getting that message that we look at. And just to give you an idea on what we're also working on, that's the long-term goal for us, but the current plan for our community and our city is we have already set up the disaster recovery centers. We want to spread the wealth, and what I mean by that, give the opportunity. So I talked to our FEMA region director last night about we have these, what they call disaster survival assistant teams, and they just go knock on doors. Well, we decided, is it more beneficial to, one, identify those short-term recovery sites for like 2 days, 3 days, and give people the opportunity utilizing Z-Trip. And again, they've supported that, ARA, and just help people go out and get that opportunity to be able to meet with that FEMA representative and have those sites moving. Because right now they're allowing us 5 teams, along with the 5 disaster recovery centers. So those are the things that we're looking at, Mayor, thinking outside the box. The FEMA region did think it was a good idea, and they're going to finalize that for us as well. So as far as unmet needs is that, Mayor, generators. So we can honestly, and with being a proactive, say that I know that building's not going to fail, and we could react. Obviously, if you're asking, getting that warehouse capability, even if it's just at the minimum, the ice-making capability, so we could look at that. And how is that going to help us, right? Produce our ice so we can definitely help the community instead of standing in line, which is usually what the posture that's usually taken. So we look at that, and then again, us working with our FEMA partners to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity. As of right now, Harris County, we have 429,645 people registered, which is record number, and approximately in individual housing program assistance has been given is 212 million people, or dollars, I should say. So,
let me let you yield some of our council members. I would point out that Finance has already applied to FEMA for expedited reimbursement for the city emergency expenses for both Derecho and Burrell. I also would like to thank the president who called the emergency center. I spoke to him on Tuesday afternoon, the 9th, about 3 o'clock to help facilitate the disaster declaration. With that said, I will yield to our Mayor Pro Tem Castix Tatum.
Thank you, Director, for all of that information. I think that we can all agree that there will be many takeaways from this storm and that every storm is different.
Yes, ma'am.
We appreciate the work that was done. I think that as a council member over an individual district, that we need to be very clear about how we are touching the people. One of the things I love about local government is we are the closest to the people.
Absolutely.
And so with that, it is important because I know that a lot of council members had individual plans to make sure they were meeting the needs for their constituencies. Mm-hmm. For instance, in our district, we had a plan with a church, the Fountain Life Center. It was very similar to what we did in the Derecho storm. And what we learned is absolutely every storm is different, because what worked in the Derecho storm for our recovery plan was not able to work during the recovery for Barrow. Absolutely. Because unfortunately the Fountain Life didn't have power. Mm-hmm. And so what we found is we had the 5 pods. There was ice at the pods. There were resources at the pods. There are 5 pods. There are 11 districts. Mm-hmm. The logistics from the pods to the additional 6 districts, I think that we need to have a conversation on how we make sure that we get the resources closest to the people. Mm-hmm. Because you're absolutely right. The people are looking to their council member, to the city, to the mayor, for resources during power outages. And we recognize that, over 2 million folks were without power. And Centerpoint held the key to our quality of life during those 11, 12 days. And we have to be lockstep with Centerpoint, the city, the county, so that we are doing what's in the best interest for the people of Houston and the 21 counties that were affected. So I think it would be advantageous for us to not only talk about our plan for the 5 pods, and we're very fortunate that we had those up, but we also need to talk about logistics to the additional 6 districts, so that when we have these types of weather events, we can get the resources to the people immediately, and not only the resources, but a succinct communication plan. And I think that that is something that as a council, we can definitely work on, so that we are putting the message out to our communities on where to reach the resources, where to obtain the resources, and how to gather that information. And then one of the questions I have for you is, we've received several reports that people who have applied for FEMA were denied, and that there were a lot of people being denied the FEMA resources. What do we do in the event that people are telling us we applied for FEMA and we keep getting denied?
Great question, Council Member, because that's always a concern. You know, if you look at the FEMA application in itself, if there's one wrong answer, one that always jumps out is, do you have a serious need, right? And that serious need, you know, by definition, what does that mean? Is it that your house is gone, or is it you need food, right? If somebody just puts the wrong answer, it takes away either the whole application or is your house livable? So there's also that process. One of the things talking to FEMA is that, you know, talking with their communications people, and by that I mean is who's doing the messaging, is it's important to know, and I'm telling FEMA that just because it's a rejection doesn't mean is it not that's a done deal. And so we're working with that on even having what they call the navigators, having people that go out as, like I'm talking about these DSA sites that we want to set up. If they have that question, and encouraging them, if you get denied, please go over, let's double check that you did not put a wrong answer that totally kicks you out. Because you look at just the box in itself, and I tried to do one just to see what it looks like. And there are some questions that I ask, okay, do you have a serious need? What does that mean? It could mean a lot of things. So some of the questions are sometimes kind of vague, but we're going to definitely talk to them and say, okay, what is the number? Because I've asked to give me the number of people who are denied, and are we following up with those people? Say, why are you denied? And if you got denied, we want to, obviously we have to craft a message with them. They're sending it to Brent Taylor, who's our Chief Communication Officer, and educate the people. And just, this is not a solid no. Maybe it is a wrong check. And it's going to be part of the education piece that we really, really are going to be working with FEMA on that and just notify that.
And I get that. I understand that most of the time that people apply and then they have to appeal. If I lost all the food in my refrigerator and I'm trying to feed my family, I'm not trying to appeal to FEMA. I want to get on, apply, and say, I lost the food in my refrigerator. If there is assistance available for me, I don't want to have to feel like I've got to make sure I answer it correctly. I want to be able to get on and say, I lost the food in my refrigerator. If there is an opportunity for FEMA to replace that food, what do I check? How do I make that happen? And I don't want to have to come back and fill out an appeal and have to continue to do that, because I also have to cut the trees down in my yard and figure out who's going to remove the debris and how soon this is going to happen. And so we've got to simplify the process for people to have access to the resources.
Absolutely, I agree. And that's one of the key things we're continuously pushing with them is, how do we simplify that? You know, some of them even said that the questions are very vague, and so you're trying to, you know, navigate through that whole process. So I agree, Council Member, that's one thing that we'll definitely take back to them. Actually, as I mentioned, you know, talking to Tony Robinson last night, those are the things that, you know, I'll definitely address with him and say, you know, what is another easier process? Because at the end of the day, people are an immediate need, not 3 weeks from now or a month from now. It's immediate need that we have to identify.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then the only other question I had was, I had some residents that were concerned about the STEER program. They signed up for the STEER program. They made the phone calls, and they were never able to get through. I know that so many people were making those calls. What happens in the event that you are signed up for the STEER program, you've called and called and called and can never get through? For those residents, I think, you know, there's a multi-pronged approach that we need to be letting people know that when a storm is coming, if you are in a really tough situation and you're taking care of your elderly parent, you know, we've got to figure out how we get that message to folks. So if they need to evacuate a week before the storm comes, because we may not be able to get to all of the people that are on the STEER, there needs to be some additional logistics that happens for people that really need that help, that just could not get through because the phones were down, the phones were so many people were calling at the same time. There's some additional logistics that needs to happen.
And thanks for that comment, which is part of the STEER program and process is if we're calling and there's no answer, we have to go, which is why we did the 1,517 door knocks to see are people home, are they there? And then we have to follow up because it is a registration site. And we even had to clean that up because at the end of the day, the STEER is under the state and it's whatever data we get, and we have to clean that. And that's the difficult part that even our IT people are now talking to the state, like, look, we have to, your process, your system is bogging down. Case in point, council member, if you register every year, right, and you have a different phone number, or just register every year for the last 7 years, the system kicks out your name 7 times, so we have to call 7 times, right? And those are the things that we are working with them. But again, the 1,517 knocks on doors, that's why. If we don't get an answer, we have to get that on the list and go out and knock on the door and make sure that those individuals are safe, those that are registered that we have in front of us.
Thank you for your time today.
No, thank you.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for everything.
Thank you.
I know how hard you and your team worked both before and after the storm, so I really appreciate it. I do agree with Mayor Pro Tem's comments about working with the district council members. I think many of us have plans for our own districts that we need to coordinate with the city as well. In District 8, we worked really hard to open a cooling center, get the electricity there, get the resources, get volunteers, and it wasn't even recognized as an official cooling center with the city. So a lot of people didn't even know that it was there unless you got my e-blast. And so, there's some tweaks I think that we can work on going forward with that. You talked a little bit about in the aftermath how CenterPoint's maps were playing a role in how your office was able to help in the aftermath of the hurricane. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I think that, in previous storms, I know that your office has relied on those maps to determine where to deploy resources afterwards. And so how did that impact your operations?
We're blessed that we have a GIS individual who has done disasters so many times. And it was painstaking to watch, right? But at the end, we were getting zip codes and asking, what is this zip code lit up? No, it's not. He would put that on the GIS map. And then from there, we were able to see how's this zip code doing. So it was pen to computer, notepad, getting that address and setting that. And then we were able to tell, okay, this portion is now 80%, right? This area is still at, only 10%. So that's how we were able to do that. But it was time consuming, obviously. But that's the resort that we had to do to ensure. And then again, council members, I say it again, is I encourage, the calls that you do. And you're right, continuously, even after the derecho, is like, what is a process that council members, we can all sit, or your chiefs of staff, and be that voice for that district? Because that area, like when I was talking to you, there's MAM and there's White Oak, and that let's look at that. Is there another faith base that we could focus on? But that center point was just that, getting that GIS, and, we had to. But then it's only as successful as the information that was being fed to us. We really had to think outside the box, and fortunate that our OEM staff members are able to do that. So it was a process that we really want to capitalize on, because I can't guarantee it's not going to happen again without the outage tracker. And that's always a huge, and I'm hoping that, what we're hearing, that it'll be up in August, is definitely very detrimental to the planning, to the response, and to the safety of people. It is. Thank you.
Councilmember Kamen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. And Chief, to your entire team, to everyone at the HEC, even beyond OEM, to every city department, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Some of our districts were hardest hit by the derecho, and then coming into this, so it was almost like a warm-up. But recognizing that it's the state's inability right now to keep the lights on. That's the challenge that we're dealing with. That's not unique to Houston, but we have encountered it a lot more. But I'm going to focus on, as you said, and Mayor, you asked, what can we be doing? What can we be focusing on? some thoughts that had come up as we look ahead. I had spoken to an unhoused individual outside of West Gray Multi-Service Center who, before the storm, because a lot of the unhoused population knows that facility, a lot of our disability community families know that facility, Mayor, an unhoused individual had actually gone there prior to the storm, and the doors were locked. And he rode out the storm outside of West Gray. So one of my questions looking forward is what we had done so in the past, but what type of unhoused population outreach did we do or can we do ahead of a storm to make sure that folks are safe and off the streets?
So one of the things that our mass care coordinator does is obviously reach out to the unhoused, right? We work with them. What is the plan? Are you passing out and that's the hardest part, is passing out that message. But working with them, the homeless coalition, working within our own city of identifying those areas and what the churches are doing, or those facilities are for that. So that's always the one that we really, really work hard at, because number one, how do people get the message right? And so we have to use that force multiplier on how do we get that message across, and then coordinate with them and see what their needs are. And I think that was the other challenge, is that they had their capacity, and that's the thing, reaching with our capacity.
Right, and I know that the shelters reached capacity in the aftermath, but again, my question relates to, and Mayor, I'll write my questions down and submit them as well,
yes.
Is what did we do for outreach and what can we do moving forward? We're going back to the CenterPoint data sharing, just so it's clear for the public, because you hit on it to Councilmember Peck's point about where to direct our assets, which are limited. HPD was working 12-hour shifts, even past when other departments had scaled back down. During the derecho, CenterPoint did not share any data information with us about power outages, and they continued to withhold that information even to OEM, so we were walking blind through all of it. Then with the hurricane, it took how many days before y'all were able to get a GIS map up? And just so the public was clear, what that means is CenterPoint was not sharing direct information with us. They gave us picked out data that said, here is a zip code that is still out. Then OEM staff, which is very short-staffed for the size of our city, had to pick that data, input it, and create an entirely new mapping program. So every few hours, they would have to retake that new data that CenterPoint would give that's raw, and then create a new map and go off of that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it was not an easy process. It was burdensome, and it was not the fastest way or indicative of direct communication and cooperation in that way.
And I think, and to add to that level of frustration, is that when I would look up and I'd come in out of habit, just look at the outage, right? It's important to know that the outage was CenterPoint customers, not City of Houston only. So then I had to ask the question, give me City of Houston proper numbers, right? And that was also a challenge. So I had two sets that we had to work with, had to, through assessments, hey, what's hit? And then I hear, well, it's citywide. Okay, so then if that were the case and the city tracker was working, or the outage tracker, I could say, okay, well, out of these 2 million, I have this area that's got 300,000. You can, and we have one that's 5,000, right? So you know where to put your resources and start doing the greater improvement right off the top. So that was very difficult.
And we also didn't know where the most significant damage was.
Exactly.
So if we positioned assets in one area and lights came on that day, we're so relieved that lights came on, but then all of our assets are in one location. They should have been positioned somewhere else. So I bring that up because I want it to be very clear about the challenges that as a city we continue to experience, even in the response effort when we don't have access to the type of information that we need that is controlled by CenterPoint. Regarding WIC and SNAP waivers, Mayor Pro Tem pointed out just the basic necessities of people who've lost what they've lost, and that's excluding all the home damage, boards that are fried because of the power surges, all of that. How long did it take us to get the SNAP waiver this time compared to the derecho?
I think within 2 days, Councilmember, and I'll get that number that day, but it was within the first 2 to 3 days that the governor approved it.
And are we able to get that waiver in advance if we know that a big storm is coming? Sort of like when the state can submit to the federal government in advance for an expedited declaration.
I want to say that we can, but obviously there's those triggers, dollar amounts, and those are things that I'll definitely take back and say, okay, can we just have the paperwork ready to go, or do we have to wait for that trigger dollar amount to say, yes, now you can do it, right? And you recall it took approximately 4 to 5, even after we knew what the numbers were going to be, it took about approximately 5 days to even just get that individual assistance, right? So those are the things I'm looking at. Okay, how do we speed up the process? And I think we have some good relationships now, talking to FEMA and the directors there.
And 211 is still open and available for additional resources for residents, even if they are denied through FEMA.
Correct.
Moving forward, we continue to talk about backup generation. And to give context, my understanding is all fire stations should have reliable backup generation. All police stations should have reliable backup generation. For one station, it can be anywhere from $350,000 to $1 million, depending on the electrical that is needed for that. That's a very big price tag. And then we move into, but it's necessary. When we move into multi-service centers, that balloons even more. My question is, and I support Mayor getting as many backup generators in as possible, but my question is, are we doing an assessment of those facilities? Because it's one thing to be able to say, oh, great, we've put in a backup generator, but in a Cat 3 with a roof that is way past its life expectancy, is the roof going to blow off? And then what good is the fact that we had a backup generator in a building that we can't use?
So, yes, the answer to that is yes, right? Talking to Director Messiah, we're looking at the structures, we're looking at the priorities, we're looking at, again, what is the return on investment, right? Do we have to harden the building first before we put it in? So all these underlying factors that have to be made in the decision-making process on just that, just to say, hey, we're going to put it there, and the building can't withstand, Cat 2, Cat 3, then, so those are the areas that we have to look at as far as the mitigation is concerned.
Okay. And regarding George R. Brown, that's our refuge of last resort. And for some of us who experienced Katrina, we know the importance of having an effective operation that can actually take people in time. As it relates to GRB, I know that this is the first time in however many disasters that we have been through where we lost power. Has that been remedied? And in addition to that, moving forward, have we practiced our tabletops or walkthroughs as how we stand up George R. Brown, given there's so many people that either aren't at the city anymore that had been practicing setting up GRB or new people coming in? Has that work been done? And the same question goes to evacuation routes. Have we done our tabletop and multi-jurisdictional exercises?
So the answer is yes, right? We do have an evacuation planner in our office who's continuously working on the evacuation routes, working with the state, working with the region on what that looks like, right? The George R. Brown is obviously an area that people do like to go to, but then as we experienced this last time, they were down without power for 9.5 hours, right? And then the other logistics piece is what's already in place prior to that. Like in this scenario, they already had 12,000 students that were there that arrived Saturday under contract. And so those are the things that we continuously have to look at if we are going to utilize that. And then, of course, there's that cost that comes with it, that everything has to be taken into account. But the answer is yes, Councilmember, we do have an evacuation planner who works with all the other evacuation planners throughout the district of what is the best plan for them, how are we going to utilize it if we have to work with a GRB on an event that is going to require that.
Great.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a few more questions, but I want to defer to colleagues. I'll submit my questions in writing to you, but one of the things we are hearing are concerns about debris pickup, still going back all the way again to the derecho and the timing of all of this, how long it's taking, issues of mosquitoes and whether or not we're spraying. Yes. And again, I know you touched on it related to the PUC, but what is the city doing to hold CenterPoint accountable. And as I've looked into it, for example, there's a state law even going back from the legislature to 2017 that preempts the city from even regulating vegetation at this point. So what are we able to do to hold CenterPoint accountable? What are we doing at the state level? And it would be very helpful to have an ARA presentation on the history of all of this, so as council members we can understand and convey to the community the challenges that we face when it comes to this situation.
Thank you. I agree with you, and we will pursue that. In terms of submitting your questions in writing, that's great, but Mr. Munoz will make himself available to you. And
Council member, just on the mosquito issue, that last week we did do a STAR request to start having mosquitoes, and Mayor, I know we've talked about it, but it's that everything all hands on deck on a mosquito concern because of the drainage issues, obviously from the pre-storm, and then water definitely manifests a mosquito problem. So that's one thing that's already been done, and working with the health department on that. And we'll get you that information, Council member.
And obviously, during a crisis, we learn of our vulnerabilities. It never occurred to me that a fire station wouldn't have a backup system. And in fact, I can go and talk about our multi-service centers, George Brown. I'm going to make generators probably one of the highest priorities. I think we need to also, if we have generators, we've got to have some requirements of testing them. Bark has a generator, but it wasn't ready. Lack of fuel. I can go on and on. So there's been a lot of neglect. We know that. We have a great city, great people, but we have challenges that we've got to address, and we will. It'll be expensive. We know that. So thank you, and I think you get first prize for being in the emergency center during the storm in terms of your involvement. So thank you, and I share that opportunity with everyone. Councilman Carter.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for all that you all have done. I know it's incredibly difficult, and you guys do a great job. One of the ideas that I had along the way, certainly I was out at Kingwood Community Center, and we were on the non-receiving end of ICE and turning people away after we had advertised distributions out there. But I would like to see the city partner with the area school districts. And, they've all got, or most have generators in the schools as far as refrigeration and being able to utilize the area districts. When I look around the room, whether it's Aldine, Spring Branch, I think that certainly there are resources available. In fact, when we were looking to utilize our ice and water that we had left, what do we do with it? My first call was, call Humble ISD, and they actually took it for us. So I think that the area school districts are a great resource, or should be, for our city. Also, obviously the churches. The other observation I've had during the last storm out in Kashmir as well as Kingwood, this time we've got to do a better job of educating those, the staff that's at those centers. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The lack of, but at both Kashmir and Kingwood, the lack of, I'll say, interest, the lack of education that, and I know those are parks, staffing, but it was an embarrassment. I mean, as far as signage or any type of information for the residents, that are coming in. These are people who are frustrated, they're hot, they're tired, they're cold, whatever the situation would be. And, there's no connection to FEMA, and, even so much as setting up these cooling and or warming centers in the future, to have a local warehouse opportunity to have some of these pieces of the puzzle that go together to set these up and to be able to deploy that is essential. And I really think that there are opportunities as far as getting a warehouse and ice production, and that takes time, but there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there that I would love to talk with you about.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ISDs are always a great approach, and then just hoping that there's no infrastructure. I know that Derecho Spring was pretty much wiped out, Spring ISD, that we had to set up feeding just for the children. HISD currently they were shut down for like 3 days. And that was always a concern for us. Are there children that rely on those meals, getting those? And those are the things that working with HIZ. Let's partner together and see what you have, because they had 202 schools that were shut down. And so that was another mass care feeding that we had to really take into consideration, and what partnership are we going to have. Because you're right, Councilmember, there are children that depend on that meal if that school district's down. But then what can we work together in those assets and do some type of MOU and be the force multiplier? So yes, I'd like to sit down and talk to you, definitely.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, let me first of all begin by saying thank you for your leadership at a very detrimental time.
Thank you.
There's no question the task that was facing you all was just enormous, and that was only Cat 1. I've experienced every storm in Houston in my lifetime, from Carla all the way up to the present, with the exception of one in Ike when I was out of the city and in another city. But let me just commend you and the mayor for taking the leadership in this process. It's easy to be the quarterback on Monday after the game on Sunday, but the truth of the matter is that the strategic plan, and for your service as Coast Guard and your great experience in that, we need someone that could take leadership and are thinkers about plans. Everybody can't be at the OEM on an emergency day. These districts are wide. Houston is 660, square miles of city. And the Mayor Pro Tem talked about the fact that many council district leaders are in their districts trying to take care of the business. One of the things I do want to put out is strategically some of the points are made. Several weeks back, I brought up here about ICE. It's interesting that the city and the mayor had to come up with ways to get ICE into our city. It became a very, very needful commodity. I brought up in council about the suggestion of having places within our communities to include churches. I brought it up at this council where you have ICE machines made to provide that. We have to think strategic. I know some of my thoughts are military thoughts, because one of the things about being military, you have a plan going in and a plan coming out. That's what we do. And so with your experience and leadership by Mayor, I believe that we need to come up with plans to provide. We have churches in all of our communities, everywhere. We had a meeting with the mayor that I brought pastors on, and talked about we could have places and pastors not only for cooling centers, providing ICE with generators. They have vans and buses that they can provide. There should be a humongous list of people provided to you as to what churches, north, south, east, and west. And we don't have to struggle or strain the city on trying to find places. The multipurpose centers can only do so much.
Yes, sir.
But we can massively do this. Now, Harvey was water. Barrow was wind. So with the combination, if it was water and wind like what we got with Harvey, it's hard for people to mobilize. You can't hardly get people around. So then you're talking about lines being down. I just received a text from one of the citizens says, when are we going to have a training process of the people in the community participating in emergency preparedness? This ain't rocket science. A lot of the council members, Joaquin and so many others, were doing what they do in their districts. So I'm hoping going forward with the ministers group that we've generated, and we met with the superintendent at HISD to talk about the fact schools could be used, transportation by that, particularly when it comes to the senior citizens. They're generally the most vulnerable people in times like this. So I'm looking forward to us. I think it's all on the table. Center Point, we all know about that, and the mayor's addressed that, and he will do it again in Austin, I'm sure, but as well as other councilmen. But I just want to commend you and say today that it's time now for us to create a strategic plan about what comes forward, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Last point, I was here and participated with the Salvation Army and Red Cross during Katrina. The churches were involved when it was George R. Brown and when it was at the Astrodome. See, this is really old news. It really is. So, but if we just get the people and all of our fellow colleagues, we are a council. We're not working in silos here. We ought to work as a council, which is what we're called. And that way, whether something happened on the west side or on the north side, everybody ought to participate and everybody ought to have some efforts in doing it. So I look forward to putting this plan together.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, Councilmember. I know you reached out, a while back on just that after derecho, and looking forward to your church event that we're going to be going to. And I think the other thing, the mayor said what our unmet needs is definitely grow the OEM staff to more. I think that's important to just do that, instead of having positions on grants that we're limited to what they can do. So we're looking forward to that too. So that'll be part of the strategic plan. I'm looking forward to working with you on that.
Good. Thank you.
Councilor Flickinger.
First of all, thank you for everything you did. We all know how hard you worked through this. I think we're all in agreement that electricity is the biggest issue.
Yes, sir.
We've got to have redundancy in the backup generators, certainly at the fire departments, the police departments, the community centers, the lift stations, it kind of goes on and on. I was met with Stephen David yesterday, and I asked him about getting a generator for the Kingwood Community Center, and he said they're already on a plan with it, so that was already nice to hear. Yeah, the other issue I think we've got, too, is the communications, because once people lose power, they lose internet and the phone service, it's pretty difficult to communicate to people after the fact, hey, we've got water and ice up here at this facility. Yet at the same time, we can't necessarily guarantee that the facilities are going to be in good enough condition, so it seems like we're having to try and thread the needle to figure out what we tell them and get them the knowledge before, but yet still make sure that that information is correct. So I'm not sure how we go about solving that.
So, Councilman Davis brought up, and I've gone throughout the communities too, when we're working on our hazard mitigation plan, Councilman Pollard had a great, if you look at his community, right, you have those individuals that the force multipliers, and, Councilmember, in your district, when we were out there doing hazard mitigation, the format, that template of having those community leaders that he has and doing that force multiplier, Councilman, remember you mentioned the churches, right? Those are the plans that we're looking at, that we have to look and think outside the box, because there's the reality that the phones are always going to work, that there's not going to be a cyber issue, that, look at the hospital systems, right? So that's the crisis communication plan that we have to look at, which I think we've gotten away from the grassroots of where do people feel comfortable, right? And making that hub and working with you all and here in council, as you said, sir, to start doing that. And that's on us, that we're going to start definitely looking at and see what is that process, how does that look like, so we could be that, utilize your constituents, you as that force multiplier.
No, and I think everybody's kind of made the point of the community and getting the community more involved and volunteers, that type of thing. And yeah, we really need to get as many people involved.
The other thing we're working with, we do have private industry mentioned. The mayor's mentioned that. We're reaching out to AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. What can we utilize through them? Because they have disaster response teams, and we're meeting with them. It's like, what can we offer the community when we want to pass out? They got those burn phones. They got all those. Now we're getting that cachet of utilizing them to start not only putting up the towers when communication's down, which we did this time, but also giving those assets. We're working with CompuData to give computers to people along with their hotspots and everything else that now a lot of the NGOs are coming forward, and the private industry as well. So that's another model that we're looking at.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, definitely want to just make sure that on behalf of District I, that we appreciate the work that you and your team have been doing as well. And I look forward to those conversations about localized response. District I, 45 Beltway pretty much to, Highway 90 and Greens Bayou. So there's a lot of area that we cover. And unfortunately, the northeast part and the hobby area, we don't have a multi-service center. We don't have community centers. And so I definitely want to continue to lean on our faith-based community to ensure that we do provide some type of point of distribution in the future. And I think it's important to recognize that you don't necessarily need power to have a point of distribution. You set up shop outside, and we need to start looking at those opportunities as well. As I saw several of the maps for cooling centers, which again, I understand that energy is important, power is important, but there is a huge gap in District I. And that arrow that we talk about all the time, District I is really at the head of that arrow, moving east. And so, again, I'm super interested in wanting to sit down with you and your team to ensure that we fill those gaps. Thankful for HFD, the Valjanki, for opening up. It's a city facility that, historically we didn't think about in District I because it wasn't in District I historically, but that needs to be a point of distribution at the very least. And then when power's there, understand that there are some operations that are happening, training and whatnot, but it should be also a location where community in the Skyscraper Shadows and the Glenbrook Valley, Garden Villas, North Hobby, Gulf Meadows, that they're able to also see as something where there are resources for them as well. It's just hard to say, hey, drive over to Sunnyside.
Yeah, no, I agree, sir, and thanks for that conversation that you and I were having on trying to figure out what sites to look at. And that's when we decided, I threw out there, and I'm glad it worked, the Fire Academy, and so we made it happen fast. And moving forward, that's one of the areas now that we have in our GIS mapping system for your district as far as, just that facility that hadn't been utilized before that now. And thanks for reaching out. I appreciate that.
Definitely, yeah. Again, to be prepared for something that's so unpredictable, you just got to be on all cylinders. And so I appreciate all the work y'all are doing 24/7, keeping our community safe. Mayor, I have two things that I would definitely like to bring to your attention. We started having conversations about what does a generator look like at a senior facility, a senior apartment, maybe some of these nonprofits, or maybe even churches. I'd love to look at Chapter 312 at the state code to see what kind of tax incentives, tax abatements we can start giving for the cost of putting in a generator in some of these facilities. So, for example, if we have a nonprofit that has a community center, or a church, what does it look like for them to be able to, to see some kind of incentive to place a generator at their location? In addition to that, the process of preparing for what the storm, post the storm. Right now, what we're going through is a lot of debris removal, and I'd love to see solid waste come here next week as well to talk about what that looks like, specifically when it comes to not just the department. I understand that our city employees are working hard, but we have contractors that are going out there as well. And I want to make sure that the debris removal is taking on the same kind of passion as when it comes to recovery. Post the derecho storm, there was still debris that was out there. And I understand that there was a report that we did the first completion June 30th. That was definitely not the case. I know that for a fact. Several of my colleagues know that as well. And so not putting the burden on our city employees necessarily, but on those contractors that we know we're going to get some kind of reimbursement back from. We need to make sure that debris removal is just as much of a priority when it comes to lights being out, making sure that we have points of distributions, during the recovery. And so I look forward to working with your administration as well, Mayor, and your staff to, seeing what kind of incentives we can have for apartments, senior apartments specifically, to be ready with generators, but then also, this debris removal needs to be a huge priority right now as well.
Well done. And I could show you a text I sent 10 minutes ago while paying attention to the solid waste director about additional resources. He's got to bring on additional resources, contractors, in view of back-to-back storms now. I might point out that FEMA's treating those storms as separate events, so that's obviously complicated, but they were back-to-back. So I'd be glad to bring solid waste. I would look forward. I talked to Mark on a regular basis, but in the last 10 minutes I've texted him, you've got to get additional contractors in here. Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor.
Morning.
Chief, I can't, I don't have any attaboys today or attagirls today because I don't really care what Centerpoint does in terms of their tracker because we have the data for 11 districts in the city. Houston Planning has GIS maps. We know the income, and on the west side for the people I represent, their average income is $47,000. 45% of the people I represent are foreign-born. In the practice of how we do this work, it should be our instinct to make sure that those communities have a place to go and have direct resources. That did not happen. If I was not prepared on the west side with water and partnerships and collaborations, we would not have a damn thing. No one from OEM said, what's happening on the west? How can we assist? No one. If I didn't have A-Leaf ISD, if I did not have the West Houston Chamber identifying a forklift so I can get 18 pallets of water off a truck, those people would have nothing. We served over 2,500 people and had to turn them away. I don't want to hear anything more about our goals. I had seniors charging life alerts in their cars, ventilators in their cars, and there was no support. The West Side cannot be forgotten. I need that commitment, not just for me, but for the 250,000 people I represent. They cannot be forgotten. I go all the way to Highway 99, Cinco Ranch. I go all the way to Meadows Place. The eye of the storm came through the West Side, and there were no resources deployed. You know who offered me ice? Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. She offered me ice. We have to leverage the currency we have in this city, the people that are on the ground, the churches, to all of these points. These are just, we're all echoing the same thing. It has to start showing up in the work that we do for this city. We are not new to this. I don't have any, because we're still dealing with recovery. My District F team, we have our own translation team because everyone doesn't understand English. I represent Nigerians. I represent Chinese, Vietnamese. There's different dialects with that. And we have to be intentional, not just talking points about diversity, but when the rubber meets the road, can the person that is foreign board understand where to go? They don't have the money to fill another ice box up. It was the 4th of July. They spent their extra money on barbecue, on celebrations, and that's gone. We have to be very thoughtful. It is not enough to say, call 311 and they'll come get you. So I'm supposed to sit with a 6-pack of water and a pack of ice and wait for someone to come get me in a heat advisory and then wait to get back to Highway 6? It doesn't make any sense. So all of those plans, it's interesting to hear that these conversations are already happening, but you have a huge asset within this council that can help color in the lines of that and have a better activation. I would have loved to know that you had people knocking on doors of seniors. We have volunteers that are ready to go in their language, ready to go. We can complement that work, and none of that communication was offered. That opportunity was not offered to make sure that if a senior needed oxygen, how do we know that we can get that to you so your people can get them what they need? This was a Category 1, and people died on a Category 1. I have 6 roof leaks in my house because of this, and I still had to be out on the street. So I think that hopefully the next time you come here, which is hopefully soon, we have a strategic plan that everyone's aware of. We have more partners at the table, school districts, churches, volunteers that are ready to serve their community immediately after disaster. Because if you make $47,000, a Category 1 on paper to some is a Category 3 to others. It's going to take them time to recover from this. They don't have money to go to Dallas and stay in a hotel for weeks. They don't have it. They're losing wages. Businesses shut down. None of that's your fault. But in terms of recovery, those are the nuances that we deal with on the ground. And I just want to extend to you directly, allow me to support and walk hand in hand with you, particularly on the West Side, because we need that help.
Councilmember, thanks for that offer. And one of the things that we continuously push for is working with the council members. I know that Brent's already sent out to your staff and to all the council members on the open house that we're having, right? We have to work with you all on that force multiplier. The other thing, too, is part of that is going to sit down with you and your staff on this is the sites that we have. You know, we have 700 square miles that we have to address, right? And those are the things that we look at, because each and every one of you here understands the community, see what the needs are. And Councilmember, I sense your frustration, but, you know, I appreciate the compassion that you have, because that allows us to look at those areas. You know, I do understand, you know, me going through it, that what is the messaging? What is the compassion piece that we're doing? And Councilmember, and I'll tell you that we strive very hard, like very hard, and to make sure that everything's covered. But it is a partnership as a force multiplier that I'm excited about this. Through everything that happens, there's always those opportunities to make it better, and we strive to make it better. I have teams that I will tell you that we look at, that I have to continuously, you know, in the compassion. If you look at our strategic plan, I'm proud to say that the underlying of that is compassion, because we are in the civil service business, and we take it very seriously. But the compassion that you show, I look forward to the meetings that, you know, that we're going to have. I look, you know, when we get those force multipliers, the messaging that we look at. You know, after the storm, I see what council members sent emails to me, and I look at and see. And then when I don't see one, it's like, okay, how do we open this communication where, what process should we use? Because, council member, I grew up extremely poor, and I know that is, you know, and part of the National Advisory Council, and I'm going to get on that soapbox, is they say, get your kit ready. I know it costs approximately $300, but, council member, when you either have a choice to eat or buy flashlights, I'm going to eat. We need gas, evacuation routes that we look at. Studying every disaster, social economics determines where you go, what you eat, and where you stay. And those are the things that I look at. And I applaud the passion, because this is the things that make us better. And what you just said right there, I'm excited to be meeting with you all, with our staff. One of the things I'm going to present is to grow that staff. I have 16 people for 700. But now we have a mayor, we have leadership that understands emergency management and what it brings, right? So those are the things that we work at every single day throughout the year. So I look forward to sitting down with you, and I look forward to Brent's going to send out, and has already sent out. We have July 25th. We're meeting with council members. I know it's never been done before, you know, and that's one of the key things that I look forward to working with you on that. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Plummer.
Thank you, and I want to just, you know, commend all of my colleagues, especially what Councilmember Thomas said. I know, I mean, I don't know personally because I don't have a district, but I do definitely acknowledge what you're saying. I think that it's past time of us saying that, you know, we're trying to get prepared. We are the city of storms. I mean, we've experienced that for years, right? So I think saying that at this point shouldn't even be words that we utilize. We do have a resiliency plan in place that I understand the administration is vetting. Well, we need to get that done 30 days. Lily pads have to be, I mean, I know that we don't know where the storm is going to hit, but if you have multiple locations identified, and I think we need to add libraries to the list, because I think libraries are in a lot of locations. You know, one thing the Latter-day Saints do incredibly well is create bunkers. We need to not recreate the wheel and duplicate, right, what they already do. I mean, they are so prepared. I don't know if anyone's been to Utah to visit, but they are ready for anything coming our way.
We do meet with them continuously, and they were part of this activation.
Yeah, no, that's great, because they already have the answer. So I think identifying the lily pads, the warehouse you're talking about, having the lily pads as act as mini bunkers in communities, whatever those look like, using the faith-based. But I do believe it does have to be secure, so I recognize that piece as well. And I do think the city has to have governance because we need to be able to access private property. So I think those are things we need to work out. I'm going to fast track my apartment inspection reform ordinance. I'm just letting everyone know. And I'm going to tack on senior living facilities. There has to be a mandate that if you own a senior living facility, at a bare minimum, one floor needs to have a generator that cools everything. Let their seniors plug everything up, and the elevator needs to be attached to the generator. A refrigerator, seniors don't have a time understanding of what days are looking like. They don't remember if the banana's been in there for 2 days or 3 days. You're dealing with people with dementia. We don't need seniors getting sick and things of that sort. At a bare minimum, a generator needs to be covering first floor, elevator, so fire department is not trying to get our seniors from like 3rd, 3rd, and 4th floors that can't get downstairs, and they've got to be able to plug up their devices. We had tons of seniors that didn't want to leave because they were so scared that someone was going to steal their property. Yes. So there's an understanding there, but I love what Councilmember Joaquin said regarding getting funding for senior facilities. I think that's really important too, because I think that the generators do get to be expensive, but if we just focus on one area, maybe in the beginning, and making that a requirement, I think that may be something that would be a little bit less expensive, and we don't have to, energize the entire building. But I think that would help immediately. But I think it's done. No, I think we're done saying we're going to get ready. We should have been ready. You have members here that are ready to work with you. You have an administration that's incredibly supportive. So let's just kind of get this thing done, and let's identify where these lily pads are going to be and make sure that we don't wait to hurricane season. We need to stock these things with solar fans. We need to stock them in advance when they're not 3 times the price, and have those ready to go so that. And the other piece that I've heard is that the volunteers and local communities weren't even allowed to help in the multi-service centers. That's unacceptable.
I have to say, Councilmember, that I don't know, and I'll track down that statement, because I know that we were utilizing CERT people, we were utilizing our NGOs, our American Red Cross to do the 5 shelters, everything else. And, and I know ready, it's that long-term ready as far as the hardening of the sites. The amount of runs, the amount of preparedness that went in, and part of that ready that we already do is we have our cooling and distribution centers already pre-identified. And then once the storm hits, we're like, okay, where do we go? What do we move? What can we utilize? So those are the things, but I do agree on the long-term ready, the mitigation, the hardening of the structures. The other piece you mentioned, individual assistance, that is so important, because one thing that also people forget is that the elderly or people in general might have that medicine that requires refrigeration. And those are the things that I'm excited that that's on the radar to start moving forward and making that, as I say, and if you say individual assistant apartments or whatever the case may be, nursing homes are obviously regulated. But, we have a saying inside, if you get the check, make the check. Make sure that people are being checked on, that there's that responsibility that comes with a more when you say assisted living. I agree. And
that one thing HEB did for us, because I heard tons of people didn't have, obviously electricity, but they had medication. So HEB gave us about 150 small styrofoam coolers, and we hand delivered those to seniors because they had to keep their insulin cold. I mean, there were so many medications they had to be refrigerated that were challenged. I mean, we're giving out ice, but we're not giving the ice melted. I mean, my God, by the time you left one location, my whole car was like dripping with water because it was melting as I was driving. So we have to start now, and I think these lily pads, we can get, styrofoam coolers and prepare everything for our seniors so they have that one little piece in their corner, everything's ready to go, and then they're prepared. But we just have to stop saying that we're getting ready.
Yeah, no, in the lily pads for us in our languages, when there's high water, we move them there as a point of collection so people could be taken to the lives of safety. But that's something that we continuously work with the high water crews as to where we're going, and then what necessities do they need for that person and the medically fragile. So
yes, whatever where we want to utilize.
Yeah, no, I got you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director, for everything that you and your team done during this recent storm. I echo my colleagues. One of the challenges was communication. And Councilmember Davis mentioned that we can't be at the headquarters when a storm happened. District B is basically really spread out. You know, I have Acres Homes, I have Willowbrook, I have Greenspoint, I have Humble, I have all the northeast neighborhoods, Pleasantville, Fifth Ward, Cashmere Garden. And when your council member is without lights and don't have cell signal, it's like, what do? All the neighborhoods are without lights, you know, and you think you prepare. You have a faith-based alliance where we meet monthly to prepare for storms like this, right? But all my faith-based alliance churches was without power. And so the challenge was, you know, not being able to communicate effectively with your office, like, what do? I went and purchased ice. I'm trying to purchase ice. I actually didn't get what I wanted because I know the city was purchasing ice from the Express company. But the main thing is communication. You know, we had senior centers, you know, that folks were stuck. Thank you to Red Cross for doing wellness checks and get there. We were able to text them the information. They were able to get there quickly. However, communication was the main problem for us, you know, and right now we still have residents without lights. And I know AFL-CIO will be there this week doing some repairing weather heads, but we're still in the middle of, to me, a storm, you know, because we're without lights and people are still trying to recover. And so any way we can, like, improve communication, you know, I mean, I know when we were getting the information, it was like across the city as a whole, but for me, not district. So only way I knew that we were without lights is if someone reached out to me to let me know. Because Centerpoint was saying, hey, this area is they have lights now, but they didn't have lights. And so communication is very critical. And of course, my office would do a better job. I've, you know, got some insight from some of the council members on what they did in their districts. However, working with your office will make sure when we're faced with another storm like this, that we can respond a whole lot better. Thank you.
No, thank you. And as far as the communication, council member, we're setting up an after action that, you know, we're going to definitely look at meeting with your staff. And if you could send us that name, and I'll have Brent sent out, again, the OEM-MC@HoustonTX.gov, the mass care, you know, that we could utilize and get that and make sure it's on our radar. Anybody might have an individual, just like we did yesterday with the Bayou Apartments and your district council member. So thank you.
Councilman Kamen.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked a lot about response, preparation, recovery, and operations through OEM. But one of the things we haven't discussed or touched on is where we are not prepared when it comes to flood mitigation and drainage. We've said that every storm looks different. This was more wind and power loss. Harvey sat over us, and it was just a deluge of rain. We know that the investments we are making in infrastructure, in drainage, are working. But even, I use the example with Project Braze, Meyer Grove Detention, and even the Beech Nut SWAT. It held, but we were all holding our breath, because had that storm sat over us, waters would have been over. There are neighborhoods that don't have any investments yet. So, Mayor, when we talk about how we do need to prepare, I continue to say we are not ready for the big one because we do not have the sufficient investments in infrastructure and flood mitigation that are needed. I have asked, and I'll again ask again, for a list of what projects through Public Works are on hold. There are many projects that are shovel ready that we needed to get in the ground that are ready to get going on, and we need even more than that. So as we talk about disaster preparedness, infrastructure is core to that, and we have to start moving forward as expeditiously as possible on the projects that we can get through. And that, of course, is in partnership with the county, with the state, with utilizing the federal dollars that are available to us. But we are not out of the woods here. And again, we're talking very specifically about the recovery in response to Beryl, but looking ahead, the big one can come, it will come, we're on borrowed time, and we need these projects.
Yeah, hey, Councilmember, our hazard mitigation plan was blessed by FEMA in January, which is a 5-year plan. And just, we keep on talking about preparedness, and you all are going to be the first to hear. I think some of you might, how seriously we take that, and the hazard mitigation is a huge part. Is last week, in the middle of it all, we got notified that the city has obtained the Emergency Management Accreditation Program, I guess, gold standard. It's going to be official, but that makes us the largest city in the country to have that right. And that's part of those processes that encourage us to see how we can dig deeper. And I'll definitely discuss that hazard mitigation plan with you if you'd like. Thank you.
Tom, thank you. We're very fortunate to have you. We look forward to being in contact with you. I'd offer all the council members recommendations to meet with you and visit the emergency center.
Yes.
Everyone's made excellent points. The transparency is something that's been lacking to put our challenges out in front of the public. The only way they're going to be willing to help us solve them is they've got to know about them. And it would be interesting to go around the shoe and say, what keeps you up at night in terms of city services? And I'll just volunteer what keeps me up at night. All the issues we've addressed are serious, certainly the drainage, infrastructure. If you haven't visited the East Side Water Plant, it ought to be a requirement to sit at this shoe. I asked myself and our team, what would shut down the city? Jackson, Mississippi was there last year. Totally shut down the city because of water supply. If you visit the East Side Water Plant, literally it is being held together with baling wire and tape. I dare you to go visit it. We talk about so many needs, so much neglect over years. We've got to address our water supply and our solid waste. We haven't discussed it this morning. We'll get Public Works in here next week. 150,000 gallons of waste was released into our bayous while we're actually under a consent order. So water supply, wastewater, obviously fire and police, I can go through the list, but the one that really ought to keep us up at night if we wake up and we don't have a water supply. Now, no one's ever discussed it in public. When you talk about how great our city is, it's the challenges of a neglect of infrastructure, drainage, streets. I can go on and on. That's the reason I ran for office. So the challenge is ours. We have a lot of work to do. Certainly, storm recovery, preparation, we're up at the top, certainly while we're in hurricane season. But you can't continue to govern by spins that everything's great, that we got a surplus, which everyone knows we didn't have a surplus. So all I'm saying is we've heard this particular subject this morning, but there's a laundry list of things that we've got to come together and address. And you can't fix something if you don't admit it's a problem. And I don't know how much discussion in previous years has been about our water supply, but it's a real one. And someone said, why didn't Whitmire know that the fire stations didn't have backup power? That's the reason I have department heads. And we've got some great department heads. I'll definitely get solid waste in here next week because debris pickup is a life safety issue. But thank everyone for participating. I think we need more transparency, open discussions. Some of you have been here longer than others that we can benefit from your experience. And I look forward to committee hearings chaired by Carter and the Mayor Pro Tem with Centerpoint. Everything we've talked about today revolves around energy and power. Not a thing we touched on is not controlled by the availability of power, whether it's ICE, public safety, traffic enforcement. I can go through the list. So anyway, great session. Tom, we're very fortunate. I look forward to working with you in the future, and thank your team. You are understaffed, no question.
Yes, sir.
Your emergency center, 911 center has a leaking roof. There's buckets in the facility on North Shepherd. The only thing that almost kept me from getting to the emergency center was the flooding of your parking lot. It's a hell of a note that you can't get to the emergency center and or leave it because of drainage issues. And we'll address it and talk about it in public.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, council members. Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Members, next we'll move to the public hearing. Madam Secretary, please call up item number 1.
Item 1 is a public hearing for the 5th amended project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan for reinvestment zone number 14, City of Houston, Texas, 4th Ward Zone.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mayor, Council. My name is Jennifer Curley. I'm with the Department of Economic Development. The public hearing today is regarding the proposed 5th amended project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan for reinvestment zone number 14, 4th Ward Zone. On June 4, 2024, the Board of Directors of the 4th Ward Zone and the 4th Ward Redevelopment Authority adopted amendments to the project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan for the 4th Ward Zone and transmitted a proposed 5th amended project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan to the city for consideration by City Council. In accordance with sections 311.007 and 311.011 of the Texas Tax Code, the city must hold a public hearing before approving the amended plan because the amended plan reduces the size of the zone and updates the project plan and reinvestment zone financing plan. The boundary reduction was presented to the Economic Development Committee on May 29, 2024. Notice of this public hearing was published in the July 16, 2024 edition of the Houston Chronicle. The amended plan provides for the de-annexation of approximately 90.74 acres of land area, which generally includes Sam Houston Park and adjacent commercial properties. The boundaries of each of the tracts of land proposed for de-annexation from the zone are generally described as follows. Tract 1, an area generally known as the Sam Houston Park, bounded by Bagby Street on the east, McKinney Street on the north, Gulf Freeway on the south, and Walker Street on the west. Tract 2, an area generally bounded by Travis on the east, Lamar, Capitol, and Rusk Streets on the north, Bagby Street on the west, and Bell Street and Clay Streets on the south. In closing, city staff has worked with the authority on the amended plan and a recommendation for City Council to approve the amended plan. No action is required today. The amended plan will be on City Council's agenda on July 31st.
Councilor Alcorn.
Thanks, Jennifer. I remember it was just a couple of years ago when we added, we took the area at Sam Houston Park and the Heritage Society out of TERS 3, put it into this TERS with the distinct feeling that would help fund some of the maintenance of the buildings and the things that the city's responsible for over at Sam Houston Park. Understand, and I apologize for missing the committee meeting, but understand that there's a feeling that not enough increments going to be generated to provide that. I mean,
that's right, ma'am. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
No. We just added it in, and now we're taking it out. So I just want to kind of better understand that. And I mean, it is our responsibility under our amended contract that we maintain and those historic homes there, which the cost is about $350,000 a year, according to all the documents that I have when we did the lease agreement, the amended lease agreement. So I understand we're looking at other funding sources to cover that, but just want to, are we taking this area out so we kind of lower our bumping up the 25% threshold, or or because we don't think it's going to generate enough increment to handle our responsibilities, or what? Basically just...
So it's not generating any increment. So when we annex that...
Not this area, but the whole TERS, is it not?
No, well, so when we did this annexation in 2020, the intention was for
2022. I mean, it was
we did the annexation of this particular area in 2020.
Okay.
So
the lease agreement, I guess, was in 22.
So in 2020, when we did this annexation and we did Sam Houston Park, and along with some other commercial buildings, properties downtown,
right,
our intention was for those properties to fund the maintenance over in Sam Houston Park.
So the Brookfield properties or the Allen Center properties? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was COVID, and then...
Yeah, and so at that particular time in history, that area was about $3.9 billion, that value of that entire area. So that current value of that area now is 3.7.
Yeah.
It's not generating any increment, and it has not generated increment since 2020.
Okay,
so that's why we're doing the de-annexation, because it's not generating any increment. Now, with regard to the rest of the zone, yes, the rest of the zone generates increment, but remember from their project plan, Fourth Ward's original project plan guides them to do the streets in their area, and they're not done with that project. And remember, Fourth Ward is a cash-based TERS. It has not issued debt, and so they pay for their projects by cash. And so you have that issue with their streets still that need to be, there still needs to be some construction in their streets. They've done phase 1 and 2 of their plan. They still need to do phase 3. But they also are petition TERS. And some of the affordable housing dollars, the city takes in about 2/3 from their particular area, but they retain 1/3 of their increment to do affordable housing in their particular boundaries. So those are the encumbrances, if you will, on their particular...
I get it. So when we did that annexation, it was basically that those Brookfield Allen Center properties were going to take care of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. And I had similar questions as well. Essentially, when it came to the project plan, was Sam Houston, was that the only thing within District I that was, when it was expanded into District I, was that the only thing that was thought of, or were there other projects in the project plan as well?
The other funding source, so if those properties had generated more than what was needed to cover Sam Houston Park, they were also looking at the North Houston Highway Improvement Project for that specific revenue source. Because as you are aware, part of the North Houston Highway Improvement Project will affect that Fourth Ward corridor right there where, the freeway is, right? So the North Houston Highway Improvement Project will affect that area. And so they were looking at two sources. The number one source was Sam Houston Park. The secondary source was funding the North Houston Highway Improvement projects.
Well, it's good to see that Antioch Baptist Church is still in the TERS, and just want to know
what... Yeah, the church is still, yes. We did not change other areas. We just basically rolled back the 2020 annexation. And I didn't answer this question for Councilmember Alcorn. So what the dedicated source for revenue is going to be the digital kiosk revenue. Chief of Staff Newport mentioned that in his budget workshop a few months ago, and so that's what we're looking at right now for the $300,000, and then of course we're looking at other sources of funds for the other things that Sam Houston Park is looking for.
I appreciate that, Jennifer, because that was going to be my next question: is what were those things that the administration is looking at to help support what's happening at Sam Houston Park as well? So thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I apologize for interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Curley. There's no other questions. Anyone present would like to testify on item 1?
We have no one signed up.
Is there a motion to close the hearing? Thank you, Ms. Curley. We're
Castex
finished.
Tatum move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yes, have it. Madam Secretary, if you will now proceed with the consent agenda.
Under the miscellaneous category, item 2 has been removed for separate consideration. Under the accept work category, items 3 and 4 need a motion.
Castex Tatum, move.
Thomas, second.
Motion made and second. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeas have it.
Under the purchasing and tabulation of bids category, items 5. Under the purchasing and tabulation of bids category, items 5 through 13 need a motion.
Castex Tatum, move.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yes have it.
Under the resolution category, item 14 needs a vote.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed say nay. Yeses have it.
Under the ordinances category, items 15, 21, 22, 24, 25, and 26. Those numbers again are 15, 21, 22, 24, 25, and 26 have been removed for separate consideration. Need a vote on the balance.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeses have it.
Items removed for separate consideration. Item number 2 needs a motion.
Castex Tatum, move.
Second.
All in favor?
Kamen has-
Councilmember Kamen.
Mayor Pro Tem after the vote or before?
No. Before.
Before, Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem Castex Tatum.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for our city attorney. I know that this, the recommendation of this plan improves our class rating in order for us to be able to give citizens of Houston a percentage or a discount on their flood insurance. How does that timeline roll out, and when would we know that residents would actually be able to receive a discount on their flood insurance? Because flood insurance has definitely gone up, and if there's an opportunity for us to let people know, I mean, how would that work if we, can you give us some information about how that would work?
I'm not sure, Mayor Pro Tem, but let me look into it and email all of the council members on that.
Mayor, I know that we have someone in the audience that could probably answer that question if it's okay to have him address the council.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's important for us prior to the vote that we recognize that this is an opportunity for us to allow residents to receive a reduction in their flood insurance, and I want to make sure we know about it and we can get that information to Houstonians.
State your name, please, and who you represent.
Yes, sir. My name is Richard Smith. I'm the Interim Director for Public Works. And to answer your question, what this does, by passing this and getting this adopted by council, it is a prerequisite for us to move any further down. We are currently a Class 5. For us to move below or even be considered to move below that Class 5 rating, this is a prerequisite requirement by FEMA. And if we get this adopted by council, then that would put us, we're currently under audit, and this would then go towards our audit, and we would probably be looking at reductions in the next year.
So when you say we'll be looking at reductions in the next year, is that something that the insurance company is going to say, hey, we see that the city of Houston has met these parameters, consumer, we're lowering your flood insurance? Or is this something we would have to say, Houstonians, we do have this information, you need to contact your flood insurance for your reduction?
So currently, if you are under the FEMA flood insurance, national flood insurance, our class rating, as I said, is our community service rating, or rating service level is 5. We are currently under audit. When that audit is completed, we are hoping to move down to a minimum of a Class 4 rating, which would be an additional 5% reduction to their insurance. That would then be coordinated and communicated to the insurance agencies at the City of Houston. CRS rating is a Class 4 rating, which would then, those insurance companies would know that they would add that additional discount to those rating, or to their insurance discount.
So whose responsibility would it be to access that discount? If I hold that insurance, I need to call my insurance agent and say, I understand the city's rating has been lowered. I'm looking for my 5% discount?
That would be, FEMA would then communicate that information to the insurance agencies. You should not, as an individual within the city of Houston, have to reach out to your insurance company to ask for that additional discount.
Never in the history has insurance reached out to a single person and said, your insurance has been lowered 5%. So I want to make sure that we are communicating when we receive that information so that people can know that that is available and reach out to their insurance company.
Yes, ma'am, we do. We actually make that as part of our flood management office, which is under the city engineer's office within the Houston Public Works. We do make that information available to people. We do continuous outreach throughout the year and trying to encourage people to apply for and get flood insurance through the national program. But we will continue to make that available and let people know that, yes, we are a Class 4 city. if when our audit is completed, that they do move us to a Class 4.
When do we expect the audit to be complete?
The audit right now, this is one of two items that was left in the audit. That audit, we're hoping, again, I cannot speak for the FEMA reviewers because there's two different groups looking at this. We have a reviewer looking at the master floodplain program that you're looking at now, and a motion to adopt that is separate from the actual review of our class rating. So once this will be put into that class rating, we are hoping that the class rating would be done mid-August, but I cannot guarantee that. Again, it's not under my control, but we are hoping to know where our standing is.
But you will have that information when it's done?
Yes, ma'am. We will have that information.
Can we depend on you to make sure we have that information to get it to the people?
Absolutely. We will be posting it on our flood management office website, and it will also be on the Houston Permitting Center's website.
So can we depend on you to make sure we get it not necessarily on the website, but in addition to the website, to the individual council offices?
Yes, ma'am.
Or to the administration, so it can be distributed to the individual council office so we can include it in our newsletters. We want to make sure it gets to Houstonians.
Absolutely. As soon as we get that, we will make sure to see that it is distributed to each of the council offices.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Has a comment.
Arturo, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to make sure I understand. I think you're asking in part, Mayor Pro Tem, would it apply for the subsequent term of insurance or for an existing term of insurance is part of, I think, what you're asking also, correct?
I'm asking if we include this in our audit, will this impact Houstonians' flood insurance? And if we get to a reduction, whose responsibility is it? Because we want to make sure people know that they qualify for a reduction.
And when it would take effect also. Okay,
right.
We'll make sure you get that with Public Works. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Kamen.
Councilor Kamen.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we had the director here, I did want to thank your team for all of your work, and specifically within the engineer's office, Choice Morrow and Sandra De Sotel, the entire team, though, because this is a long project that takes a lot of time. Again, moving from the class we're in down to the class we're going for, I think we're the only city that may accomplish that. Is that correct?
We are currently, if we get to a Class 4, we would be one of a few. We're the largest city that is actually currently in the CRS system, the community rating system within the FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program. And we have one of the lowest ratings for a city that's anywhere comparable to our size or even close.
And lowest rating being good. Usually when we think of lowest rating, it's a little reverse this time. Mayor Pro Tem, to your question, I was going back through the presentation, and I believe the city is hoping that FEMA will close its final review by August 15th. That's going off of historical. And then if they're able, again, it relies on FEMA, if they are able to close out by the end of August, the review, then the discounts would go into effect by April 1st of next year. Again, I appreciate the disclaimer that we're somewhat at the mercy now of the federal agency review process. However, we're hoping for spring of next year.
Yes, ma'am.
And there is a shot that we would get, I think we're at 25 right now, a 30 to 35% reduction. So we're increasing by approximately 10% for residents.
So the way this works is FEMA rates us for the CRS is from a Class 1 to a Class 10. Class 10 would be no discount. We're currently at a Class 5, which is a 25% discount for those that hold the National Flood Insurance. And then for every class point that you move down, it's an additional 5% discount. So this is where, like I said, we are at a Class 5. We are currently, that's the best we can do. With the adoption of this, we are now eligible to move under that Class 5. So if we got to a Class 4, we'd then be eligible. The citizens who have the National Flood Insurance would then be eligible for a 30. If we were able to move down to a Class 3, we'd be eligible for a 35% discount.
Okay, and we've already met, I think you touched on it, the other prerequisites. So going back, this has taken several years, but we've met the flood warning and response, the building codes, and the hazard mitigation plan. So this is that last one that council's approving today.
This is the last piece that we have to be able to move underneath our Class 5 rating. Yes, ma'am.
Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Item 2, any more discussion? All in favor, say yes. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Item 15 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
Councilman Martinez.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to share with my colleagues, appreciate your support for this item. This item is to have bond capacity for the Harrisburg TERS, which lies within District I and District H. And both myself and my colleague, Councilmember Castillo, have been very, very much in conversations with the Harrisburg TERS. This is going to allow us to really see through some of the master plan for the Eastwood Park, which is in District H, and Mason Park as well. And so as we vote on this, just want to say thank you to the administration for working with the TERS as well to see these projects, whether it's pavement conditions, sidewalks, green space, and then of course Buffalo Bayou East sector as well, improvements, and so appreciate the support from my colleagues.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeas have it.
Item 21 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
Councilman Plummer.
Councilman Plummer.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm incredibly supportive of microtransit. I just have a couple of questions that I wasn't able to get answered. Can I do a friendly tag on this item? I understand that we do have some time before the contract actually expires. All right, thank you.
Fine with me.
Tag by Councilman Plummer. That's all.
Items tagged by Councilman Plummer.
Thomas joins tag.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Item 22 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeses have it.
Item 24 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
Martinez.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. And this one specifically for Mason Park, which is long awaited. The master plan was about 2017, but even prior to the master plan, there's been a lot of needs that have been requested by residents around Mason Park and the East Lawndale, Magnolia Park area. And so I'm excited about this grant opportunity and look forward to my colleagues' support as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Councilmember,
Next one?
no one.
Yeah. Just need a vote.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeses have it.
Item 25 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
Now Jackson.
Councilman Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm excited about this item. This item is a grant. We're going after a $1.5 million grant where the city is going to match it, and we'll have $3 million to upgrade the Trinity Garden Park. So want to give a shout out to Huey German Wilson, who's worked really hard, tirelessly and her team to make sure that this project moves forward, and Director Allen for everything he's done. We're going to get a new playground. In fact, my office have contributed $100 million, not $100 million, $100,000. I wish I did have $100 million, but $100,000. We're speaking into existence. Our district service funds is going to increase, y'all, $100,000 to this project. But we're going to get a new basketball pavilion, a walk trail with LED lights, and so just really excited about the work that's been done. So thank you, colleagues, in advance for your support for this grant. Don't tag nothing, Councilman. So
Thank
looking
you.
forward to it. Thank you.
Need a vote? Yes, sir.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Yeses have it.
Item 26 is an ordinance. Just need a vote.
Martinez.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like it's Christmas in July. So this is the tail end of what the Texas Park and Wildlife Grant. Now the Parks Department, which I appreciate their support, through the Parks Consolidated Construction Fund, will be contributing dollars towards Charlton Park, which is in the southeast part of District I. Also supports or services the hobby area, and so I'm looking forward to Park Place, Meadowbrook, Meadow Creek, which is in District E, to be able to see some of these improvements at Charlton Park, and so I appreciate my colleagues' support as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 30 is a motion to set a public hearing date.
Castex Tatum moved to set the hearing date for Wednesday, 9 a.m. on August the 14th, 2024.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Item 31 is a motion to set a public hearing date.
Castex Tatum moved to set the hearing date for Wednesday, 9 a.m. on August the 21st, 2024.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
This is the PEC amendment.
Item 32, PEC amendment.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank Councilmember Huffman for her work on the changes to the Proposition A charter amendment to allow council members to put items on the agenda. I know she worked really hard on this. And I think ultimately it's good that it gives us the opportunity to either just go to council if it's something simple, or take it to committee if it's something that we want to discuss further with our colleagues without violating any Open Meetings Act rules. So the concern, though, that I had is, since it is a committee of the whole and we have to have 9 council members at the committee to take a vote on something, my concern was that we sometimes just wouldn't have a quorum and couldn't get items to get out of committee. And if something was referred to committee from this body, it would just keep dying in committee. And so this amendment aims to change that. So it just reiterates the fact that if there wasn't a quorum present to vote on an item in committee, we can still then take it back to council for the vote.
Councilman Martinez.
Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate Councilmember Peck bringing this item up. I think it's important, and we've had this discussion when it comes to what quorum looks like at committee meetings. And specifically to this, I don't think the intention was ever to kill a Prop A item. What we wanted to see, or what I wanted to see, was essentially a conversation around the different ideas that council members have, make sure that there's a fiscal note attached, make sure that legally we can do that. And I think that conversation needs to be had somewhere where we're all available to, of course, bring our ideas or support for. And so I'm supportive of this item. You know, I want to make sure that, of course, nothing dies. At the end of the day, 3 council members can bring something to the agenda, but you know, to Councilmember Peck's point, we want to make sure that anything that's brought to the Prop A committee just sees engagement and folks being at the table to have these in-depth conversations that ultimately impact all of our communities. And so I'm supportive of Councilmember Peck's amendment for this, and look forward to working with my colleagues at the Prop A committee to have good conversations. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem Castex Tatum.
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to ask Council Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck a couple questions. So I understand the intent is for us to, if 3 council members submit something and it goes to the Prop A committee and we don't get a quorum in the committee meeting, are you suggesting that it just come back to council to be on the council agenda?
So this would not automatically go back to council, but allows council members to submit the item again at the next council meeting rather than waiting, I believe it was 90 days to have it heard again. This allows council members to just put it back on the agenda the following meeting.
I guess I understand what the intent is, just to make sure that we aren't playing a game of cat and mouse when people have something important that they want to put on the agenda. The concern is if we don't have a quorum at the Prop A committee, I would think if the issue was one where, well, I'm good with it.
Councilmember Martinez.
The whole thing.
Oh, well, it certainly bothers me, and in all due respect, I just would advise everyone, you're making a record, and I don't know of another body, and I've been in the legislature 50-plus years, you just don't start without a quorum. I mean, it's kind of fundamental. So everybody can vote their district and their conscience, but there's a reason you have a quorum, and it's kind of strategic. But anyway, you can certainly offer up anything you want to. Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you, Mayor. And, to Mayor Pro Tem's comment, and again, I don't think the intent is to kill anything in a Prop A committee, and I understand that quorum is needed, but it's been 7.5 months already and around the horseshoe, and there's sometimes where we lack quorum, or maybe you might see 5-6 council members and some staff, and doesn't allow us to take care of business. And I don't know if this might be helpful if, in order to possibly stop something, instead of saying that we need to push it forward, in order to stop something, maybe a friendly amendment would be you need to have a quorum to be able to stop something from going to the agenda. I'm not sure if that's the conversation we should be having, but anything that comes to Prop A committee, again, it's an opportunity to have a good conversation about what the intent is, make sure folks have done their homework, and then it should move forward to the agenda afterwards. And so if there's something that you're very passionate about, you don't want to see happen, then you should have quorum and be able to kill the item, I guess, in that sense. But to kill something because you don't have quorum, I don't think that's going to be its due diligence to what some of my colleagues are trying to put forward as well. So I'm not sure if it's something where if you don't want to see something happen, then you should have quorum, and folks need to be showing up to vote no. But plenty of times where people just won't show up, and it's happened historically. Very clear memory where an ethics committee was trying to be held, and nobody showed up, so that way no business would be taken care of.
Councilor, I respect you, but the solution is to show up.
Councilmember Davis.
I mean, and then your constituents are going to watch whether you care enough about the city's business to show up or not. So we'll see in a minute. Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I see the issue at hand in terms of Councilmember Peck's offering, but I'm concerned with those. If you don't have in a statement it says if you don't have enough committee members for a quorum at the beginning of the meeting, correct, Councilman Peck? Is that in the wording? Councilman Peck, was wording at the beginning. So some of the council members are they're attending by Zoom and that's not counted, correct? It is? So wouldn't that count as a quorum?
What's your intention? You want people to vote by Zoom?
Mayor, I believe that's left up to the chair of the committee, whether or not they want to do that by virtual
Mayor, I'm sorry.
votes or not.
The question.
The committee chair will decide if you can vote by Zoom.
The committee chair. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. Well.
Councilmember Peck.
So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just. So if it's not a quorum, then it goes back to council.
And that's the proposal, I believe.
Back to the. Yeah. Or you start over. Okay. All right.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. And so just to clear up some confusion about this amendment, so before Proposition A went into effect, 3 council members could call a special called council meeting. And every time that happened, to my knowledge, in the 10 plus years I've worked at the city, whenever that's happened, there has not been a quorum for a vote. And that's why, from what I can understand, the voters wanted the ability for council members to put items on the agenda because votes were never taken in these special called meetings. So to fulfill the will of the voters, in my opinion, is to allow us to put items on the agenda even if there's no quorum at this committee meeting. So this item, even if this amendment didn't pass, council members would still be able to then put items back on the agenda if there's no quorum. This just solidifies that we wouldn't have to do a motion to reconsider or then take it up in 90 days. So that's all this changes. This, we would, if there's no quorum, a council member could still get 2 other council members to sign on and put something back on the agenda, and we could either do a motion to reconsider or they could bring it back up in 90 days. So all this does is make it so that we don't have to do that extra motion each time. So it just kind of clears that up.
Councilmember Pollard.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the Vice Mayor Pro Tem trying to find a way to expedite items coming to the body that have been submitted by council members. I'm already on record of stating that I don't think the Prop A committee is necessary because we have all of these other committees that if something wanted to get referred to a committee, there's a mechanism for that. But what we did when we passed this first Prop A item is we brought the item before council with 3 signatures or however many we had, and then it got referred to the Prop A committee. And then it sat there for like 3 months because either we didn't have a quorum or a storm came and we had to cancel or whatever. So we just resubmitted it back to the administration. They accepted it, they put it on the council agenda, and you all voted for it unanimously. So, it's my intent, and I would think that that precedent has been set that any 3 council members can bring forth whatever they want that is lawful at any time based on the city charter that says at any designated time, and the administration will consider putting it on the agenda. Now, I don't think it should be a consideration. I think it should automatically go. But the precedent has been set that when we resubmitted it, it automatically was put back on the agenda. So I'm all for expediting anything that allows council members to get their items on the agenda. This body and the way this local government works is different than the state and the federal level, where committees are of high importance and everyone is there all the time. Many times at our committee meetings, sometimes we're there, sometimes we're not. We send our staff sometimes if we cannot make it. This is technically a part-time job on paper. Some of us have other responsibilities outside of this, and you send staff. or you watch virtually and chime in, right? So there's going to be a lot of difficulty getting 9 members on a consistent basis to show up for something, especially if there's only one item on the calendar, because Prop A is only for council-brought items, right? And if it's something that it's just one item, who knows how many people are going to show up? Now, I know that's a little differently than what's done at other levels of government, and I understand that. But, you know, for us to get 9 people there consistently is going to be a tall task. So I appreciate you looking into that, and I understand why you're bringing this amendment. Thank you.
In all due respect, it would be so easy for me to just go along, get along, but we got 16 council members, and if something is important, a matter of the public's, and we can't get 9 members out of 16, oftentimes breaking quorum is actually a parliamentary procedure that is well respected. I don't think that's what we're speaking about, although that is always a tool. It's about going to a committee, not violating Prop A. There's a procedure real simple to get it back before the council, but it was discussed to allow the public to have input at a committee. I hate to bring up the parking fee, but we had stakeholders saying they had no opportunity for input, what it would do to their workers in the evening, what it would do to the retail business. So it occurred to many of us, we need the opportunity to not just bring a subject to council, but to vet it in a committee for public input. So it is discussed in a committee, is the purpose of a committee system, and then members vote to bring it back to the floor. So, like I said, I don't want to be a political consultant up here, but it's kind of pretty fundamental to every level of government, subdivisions of government, that you don't proceed without a quorum. And I would just say, maybe we're going to have to work harder, but having a quorum is pretty basic to everything we do. It's why we have a roll call when we get here in the morning. But anyway, I'll vote no, but I certainly respect people that want to create an easier process, to quote a couple of folks. I think Councilman Kamen.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think we're collapsing 2 issues. I think the first issue is the fact that we have Proposition A, which the voters put forward and said as a council body, 3 members can add something to the agenda. We also recognize the importance that there are times when it needs further discussion and debate at council, and the committee that you stood up for that is for that purpose. But again, what we are addressing is the voter intention of Proposition A.
Sure.
And allowing it under Vice Mayor Pro Tem's leadership, clarification language that makes sure that it does not get bogged down based on the realities of what City Hall is. And I'd like to address that because I do take issue with the fact that not attending a committee meeting is characterized as not caring or not working hard enough. There are 16 of us, and you have created 12 committees. To go to every single committee, whether we are assigned to that committee or not, plus Tuesdays, plus Wednesdays, plus being in our districts, plus meeting with our constituents, plus meeting with our neighborhood groups, plus meeting with organizations and entities that have items on the agenda, let alone our own policy issues that we are driving, takes an extraordinary amount of time and commitment and dedication around this horseshoe. And every single member of this body works hard and tirelessly on the issues that they were elected to address, and on issues, at least as a district council member, related to our constituents that they raise. And that includes the overwhelming amount of constituent outreach that occurs in constituent services. So I want to make sure that we're being very clear with the public about what we're discussing right now. And that is to ensure that when we need to have a debate at a committee, that opportunity is afforded to us, and that a department can come forward and elaborate, and that the public has an opportunity to add additional comment if something needs to be worked. But we also have, as a committee, as the council, an opportunity at public session for people to come forward. So I want to make sure we're very clear that this particular amendment, and Councilmember Peck, I appreciate you bringing this forward, and also that I don't want to take the words out of your mouth. My understanding of this is it's clarification language to make sure that something doesn't get bogged down, because unlike the state legislature that meets in a concentrated amount of time for several months every other year, we are here every single day. And that doesn't mean that the legislature and state representatives aren't working in their districts at other times, but it's a different format. And at City Hall, this is what we have. And with 12 committees, there's a practicality factor here that we have to take into consideration. So again, Chair, I appreciate your hard work on this, and your Vice Chair's hard work on this, and all the council members and Mayor, your team coming together to come up with a solution to implement what was a very, quite frankly, vague proposition on the ballot, while respecting the inherent intention behind that.
Well, if you're troubled by the too many committees, we ought to have that discussion as well. I'll respect that. But we have a rule, and we're fixing to adjust it to where we can conduct business without a quorum, and I just think that sends a bad message. But no, I understand you work harder than anyone, but this is one more somewhat opportunity to get something back before council, and we can all work together on that. Councilmember Castix-Tatum.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't think it is for us to conduct business without a quorum. I think it is to prevent an important item that 3 council members are trying to get addressed from sitting for 3 months. Councilmember Pollard, your example was exactly what happened, was the item took 3 months to get on the agenda. It seems this amendment would allow us to go to committee. If there was not a quorum, it does not prevent us from having the discussion with our staff present, any presentations that directors need to bring forward. If there is not a quorum, that item would then, within the next 30 days or the next month, be back on the council agenda, so that that important issue that the 3 council members have brought forth would not be waiting in space or in bureaucratic process for 3 months. So I think that it is an opportunity for us to make sure that when something is important to council members, it does not get stalled.
Obviously, it's waiting in committee, not somewhere. And
can
I fully
say it's
respect
waiting in
the 3 members sign it. In fact, I've had y'all say, more than one of you, that if I was mayor, you wouldn't even need a Prop A. So right. I don't know what the previous experience was of restricting council involvement. I don't experience that.
Right.
Having been a member of a legislative body, I know what it's like when the presiding chair will not even recognize you. And I will repeat, I've been told by more than one council member, we wouldn't need a Prop A under Whitmire. So I truly think you have a right to get anything before council. I was looking for an effective system to allow the public to have more input, get some further expertise involved in the discussion. And yes, 3 members can bring anything to council under Prop A. But the financial consequences, the impact on one district versus another district, needs to be heard in a committee. And the way to get it out of committee is be concerned enough and allocate your time enough to come make that vote. So if you want to be able to kick it out without having a quorum, represent your district. But I understand the competing interest here.
Right.
Of having
I
participate.
We're
and I
all
respect,
saying the same thing. I do think that we are all
good
saying
government.
the same
We're always
thing.
talking about good government. Councilmember Peck, we're fixing to vote on this. Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree. You have put items that I've brought to you on the council agenda before, but we don't know who the next mayor is going to be after you. And we need to put forth items that are good ordinances, not because based on who is the mayor, but based on policy and good policy. And so again, this amendment, all it changes is to make it so that we don't have to do a motion to reconsider when 3 council members bring it back should there not be a quorum at the committee. This doesn't change whether or not we should have a quorum at the committee. All it changes is that we don't have to do the motion to reconsider. So again, before this proposition went into effect, 3 council members could call a special called meeting, but people didn't show up for the vote. And that is the whole reason why people brought this forward. They wanted us to be able to talk about items and bring them up for an actual vote. And so if things are just stuck in committee because we don't have a quorum there, whether that's because people have other things to do that are, equally as important, or because it's a political maneuver not showing up, we still need to be able to take items to this council body for a vote. And so, not showing up is one thing, but I want to be held accountable. If there's something that 3 other council members want to bring forth, and, if it's something I don't agree with, then I need to be held accountable for voting no and not just not showing up for the committee.
I respect that, and we can vote. I would just suggest before we adopt this amendment, you just have to work the committee and the council to get your votes there. That's what it's all about. Tell them how important the issue is to the public. Would you please show up and vote? But if you don't want to do that, I'm prepared to vote on Council Vice Mayor Pro Tem Peck's amendment. All in favor say yes. Those opposed? Yes, let's have it. Next.
33 as amended.
Item 33 is an ordinance. As amended, just need a vote.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay.
Pollard, no.
Thomas, no.
Show Thomas and Pollard, no. Motion passes.
Got it.
Next.
Item 34 needs a motion.
All in.
Thomas is in the queue.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Castex say to move to set the hearing date for 9 a.m. Wednesday, July 31st, 2024.
Seconds.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a reminder to the Housing Department as these 4% and these public hearings come up to make sure that the committee is briefed on these items before they show up to the agenda. We are consistently monitoring the area median incomes. There have been questions that have been raised with previous developments, not particularly with these, but just to remember to stay in practice of this as we continue to bring 4% deals to this body. I'm in support of both of these projects.
Item 35 is an ordinance, just need a vote.
Councilman Alcorn.
Thank you, Mayor. I was prepared to vote on this weeks ago, but at the request of the administration, I will refer this to the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. I do understand that some of my colleagues might have some questions about this. It's very clear in the contract that this is a champion challenger contract saying that our delinquent accounts are to be reassigned based on to be eligible for additional collection areas or reassigned accounts. The contractor's aggregate collection percentage must exceed that of any other tax collection service provider for the then current agreement year through July 31st. I read a few weeks ago, the percentages of the 2 firms provided to me by the legal department, in which one firm outperformed the other each of those years. There were reassignments in every year up to 4 years ago. Then they stopped. I'm happy to have this discussion at BFA, so I will move to refer this to BFA. I do please ask my colleagues to have a quorum there, because I do want to vote this out of committee on Tuesday. July 30th. So if I could get a second, hopefully, on that.
Seconds. There's a second motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, yes. Mayor Pro Tem Castig's Tatum.
Before,
You want to be
after?
recognized?
We can vote on moving it to BFA, but I do have a comment about the item.
Okay, so vote
So
on that.
we can vote and then after.
All in favor say yes. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Recognize Mayor Pro Tem Castig's Tatum.
My question is for the city attorney. We have received the formula that is used, and I understand that the allocations or the assignments for the collections are made through the legal department. My concern is if this is an opportunity for the city to collect more dollars, and we have the history of each of the collection attorneys and what they've done. If we move this to committee, will there be an opportunity for us to not only include Aldine ISD, but some of the others that show which organization is doing the highest collection? From what I understand, the goal is for the city of Houston to collect more money. If there is one attorneys group collecting more dollars for the city of Houston, when we go to committee, if we see that one particular agency is collecting more money for the city of Houston, will we have an opportunity to make more assignments to that actual organization?
Yeah, the item is subject to amendment.
I'm sorry?
The item is subject to amendment. You would have that ability.
So when we go to committee, if it shows that one agency is doing a higher percentage of collection, we could amend to not only include Aldine, but some of the other agencies that they are collecting for us, because we've all sat around and talked about the need for dollars for the city of Houston and looking for opportunities for the city to collect more money. And based on the numbers that we've received, if we can amend for the agency that is making the most collections, we can do that following the BFA meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councilman Davis. Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to say that I hope that we all participate on Monday, as the mayor has asked, regarding the service for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I think it is certainly honorable in respect of who I've known for many, many years, worked with her personally and up close in a lot of things in our community, particularly as a pastor, and have a dedication to her district, to the city, to the state, and certainly in respect, as we should give, that we would try to, I know my plans is to be present, and thank the mayor for taking this opportunity in recognition of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I also want to say that one of the things that we're going to do from that large position, I was happy to be in District F on yesterday in the center to kind of announce about our town hall meeting coming up August 12th. Was just impressed and grateful to all of the participants. The Youth Vote, A-Lead Vote group was there, which I thought was tremendously impressive. That's my second time seeing them, and that was been created by Councilman Thomas, I think was honorable, and so I'm looking forward to it. I certainly would hope that many of us would participate in our town hall meeting, because we're going to have a third one, which will be the south side at the Fountain Life Center, and we'll conclude District K and D, and we're just trying to bring that information to the city as a whole and working with the district council people. We're just trying to assist in that. I'm excited about it, and we certainly invite everyone to come because it's open to all. and certainly appreciate that effort on the behalf of our staff in putting it together, and we're looking forward to having some great participation. FEMA has agreed to be with us. A lot of questions came up today concerning FEMA, and they've agreed to come, and we're so happy that we'll even have the privilege of possibly having our mayor to come through, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Pass.
Councilmember Kamen.
Thank you. As the tributes continue to come in, recognizing the legacy, the life of Congresswoman Jackson Lee, I think we all have our stories to share because there is not a single thing that she missed when it came to her district. She showed up for all of us. She showed up for every single resident. But I'm so proud. I was looking at an article, and they said everyone knew her as the Congresswoman. If you said the Congresswoman, you know exactly who you were talking about. But to me, she wasn't just the Congresswoman. She was my Congresswoman. And to be able to work with her, but also to live in her district and see everything firsthand. I'll share one anecdote. During Harvey, when many of us were volunteering and helping at GRB, she would show up for every single briefing, both the midday and sometimes at 2 a.m. She was the only elected official that did not miss a single briefing, and every hour in between, she was out in the district helping, doing anything she could. And we all have those stories, but I think that one for me stands out because she was known for so much, but she always showed up, and she always fought for her district. So I'm grateful that we have always had her, for as long as I can remember, here with us in Houston. On that note, I do have a few thank yous. First and foremost, the Yates Museum teamed up with the American Federation of Teachers. AFT is here for their national convention, and they actually volunteered with Yates Museum in Freedmanstown over the weekend, working to restore 5 different properties. So to all of our teachers, thank you, but to AFT, we really appreciate the support in District C. And as they're in the middle of their national convention here in Houston, we say welcome, and a very exciting welcome to Vice President Harris, who will be joining us in the city today through tomorrow for the convention as well. So we welcome her to Houston and are very excited to have her. Lastly, if residents are still interested, the Montrose walk audits are continuing. They have had a few rounds and they have been very well attended, but there's still more ground to cover. These walk audits are done with AARP. The Friends of Montrose Boulevard is partnering with the Citizen Transportation Coalition, the Houston chapter of AARP, and Urban Paths. And these walk audits go from Montrose Boulevard from Allen Parkway to 59, and then Richmond Avenue from Shepherd to the Spur. And they are literally going foot by foot, marking all of the issues when it comes to mobility and accessibility on our sidewalks, and the AARP does this throughout the city, so really encourage everyone to plug in to get them in other areas. But you can volunteer, and council members, I encourage you all to join if you're interested. But you can look at more information. There's a link here, but it is not going to make sense saying it, so we will post it to our Facebook page and on our other social media accounts. A big thank you to Alex Spike, who has done tremendous work to get this off the ground, as well as Dexter Handy and other organizations and partners in the area.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I want to start off by saying I'm still in disbelief that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee would no longer be with us. It's hard for me to imagine a world without her leadership, her passion, her energy. I have a long history of working with Congresswoman, dating back 20 years, and I've always admired her. In the past, since I've taken office, she shows up. When I first took office, it was the COVID vaccines, and she was right there making sure that my district had the vaccines that they needed to make it through COVID. And so it's going to be a huge void in my life and my constituents' life. I mean, my constituents are grieving right now. Everyone is grieving. I know the country is grieving, but we're grieving particularly because, she was part of our life, from a little kid, just remember Congresswoman Lee, so my heart go out to the family. I wish them, God keep their spirit calm, and, in the community, that we get through this hard, difficult time with the loss of our leader, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. May she rest in peace. Also, I want to, on another note, this Saturday, for residents who are still dealing with power outage, we're going to have AFL-CIO and IBEW, Local 716 in 5th Ward in Denver Harbor. They're going to be fixing weatherheads, and so if you still need some assistance, we know that it's very expensive to hire an electrician to handle that, and so thankful to the unions who's stepping up to support our community. And get them back on track, get them back online. So if you still without power, you're probably not hearing this message. So if you have a neighbor still without power, reach out to our office so that we can support them. Phone number 832-393-3009. Any other things that you need, just reach out to our office. And of course, sign up for our newsletter to stay informed on what's happening in the district. That's District B at HoustonTX.gov. Thank you.
Councilmember Huffman.
Thank you. And I know we touched on this earlier when OEM was here today, but I feel like the people of Houston, we're getting tired of being Houston strong every time something happens. We're Houston strong after Harvey, we're Houston strong after derecho. And until there is recovery and people that have their power, and not just that, the debris pickup, and I really appreciate that the mayor is putting pressure and mobilizing more trucks for that debris pickup, because as long as we see it, every day in our yards and throughout our neighborhoods and throughout our city, it's a reminder, that we're still going through this. So when I looked at the debris pickup map, District G, while other parts of the city had been touched, District G was one of the districts that they hadn't even started debris collection. And I know it takes a long time, but the faster we can get this stuff picked up, I know the residents will appreciate it.